Chapter 1833. Looking at the entire blood extinction world. The Six-Finger Mountain was the most obvious symbol. The blood race went deep into the starry sky. No matter where they came from, as long as they saw the Six-Finger Mountain from afar, they would know that they were about to return home. It was also a natural barrier for the domain. Many years ago, there was a natural disaster that swept across the domain. At that time, a large meteor shower came from nowhere and swept across the starry sky. The blood extinction world happened to be within the range of this meteor shower. The natural barrier of the Six-Finger Mountain intercepted all the meteors that attacked the domain. In that natural disaster that was enough to cause heavy losses to any domain, the blood extinction world miraculously did not suffer any damage. It could be said that for the blood race of the blood extinction world, the Six-Finger Mountain was not just a strangely shaped symbol, but more like a totem. But now this totem showed signs of collapse. With the collapse of the Six-Finger Mountain, the already turbulent domain became even more turbulent. Deep gullies appeared everywhere in the blood extinction world. Many blood race who were caught off guard screamed and fell into them. In just a dozen breaths of time, countless lives in the domain withered. The whole world was like the end of the world. The blood race under the constellations were incomparably terrified. They did not know what had happened. They only knew that death was constantly appearing around them. The six blood race Rizhao were flustered at this moment. The position of the valley they were in was the connection between the palm and the arm. As the Six-Finger Mountain collapsed, countless large and small stones smashed down, but they did not dare to dodge at all. At this moment, they were activating the power of the ancestral artifact with all their strength. Any abnormal movement could cause their previous efforts to be in vain. In desperation, they could only continuously attack and blow away the falling stones. But this only treated the symptoms and not the root cause. The Six-Finger Mountain is falling. Rizhao stole a glance at the Six-Finger Mountain and could not help but exclaim. When the other Rizhao heard this, they hurriedly looked up and saw this shocking scene. The six-finger-shaped mountain was slowly falling forward at a speed visible to the naked eye. The speed of the collapse was not fast, but it must be known that the collapse of such a huge object brought about an extremely terrifying momentum. The Rizhao people couldn't understand how such a thing could happen. They lived in the absolute blood world, and they were the descendants of the blood progenitor. Naturally, they knew that the absolute blood world was formed by the remains of the blood progenitor's body. It could be said that the entire absolute blood world was made up of countless thick rocks that wrapped around the blood progenitor's severed arm. The Six-Finger Mountain was the blood ancestor's palm. Logically speaking, even if the Six-Finger Mountain really collapsed, only the outer layer would collapse. The main body inside would not be affected because it was the body of the blood ancestor and was extremely sturdy. However, the situation now was that not only was the outer layer collapsing, but the main body inside was also collapsing. With the collapse of the Six-Finger Mountain, the entire domain changed again. This time, it was truly earth-shattering. The landform of the domain suddenly underwent an extremely terrifying change at this moment. Starting from the middle of the domain, the entire front half of the domain suddenly tilted up. The shock brought about by this change was too great. The Rizhao people could no longer maintain their figures and flew up one after another. Using their divine sense, they were all enraged. Because at this moment, the blood extinction world was like a purgatory. Death and blood were everywhere. Many of their clansmen had already died, especially those under the constellations. Almost half of them had died, and the remaining half were fleeing in panic, but they did not know where to run to. Rumbling sounds rang out in every corner, like muffled thunder, shaking the hearts of the blood race cultivators. This kind of vibration lasted for dozens of breaths before it slowly stopped. The strange changes in the domain also subsided at this moment. The Rizhao people of the blood race were extremely shocked, because at this moment, the domain that they had lived in for countless years had undergone a great change in form. Originally, the absolute blood world, when viewed from the starry sky, looked like a slightly bent arm, with the palm facing forward, in the shape of a flat palm. However, this was not the case now. This arm was bent at a right angle, and the palm that was originally raised flat had also become a tightly clenched fist. It was raised high, facing the distant starry sky, as if it was going to bombard the great danger in the unseen world. The scene of the six-finger mountain collapsing was undoubtedly the process of the palm turning from a palm to a fist. The entire domain seemed to have come alive. Such a huge change. It was easy to imagine the impact it had on the living beings in the domain. The power of the ancestor has really recovered, Rizhao murmured. Even in the blood race's philosophy, the ancestor would one day be reborn. But when this scene really happened before their eyes, they still found it hard to believe. It's not the right time to recover. Rizhao was heartbroken. He really couldn't understand why his ancestor's power didn't recover earlier or later. Why did it have to happen at this critical juncture? If it was any other time, this kind of recovery would be enough to make the entire blood race celebrate. But not now. Where's the Fengsuan mountain? The third blood race member, Rizhao, suddenly woke up. They had been working together to activate the ancestral weapon's power, to restrict the movement of the Fengsuan mountain. Now that the domain had changed, the ancestral weapon's power was also cut off, and the power that restricted the movement of the Fengsuan mountain naturally no longer existed. When Rizhao's voice fell, the blood race's attention was attracted by an object. It was a small meteorite that looked like a fake mountain. It broke through the seal of the domain and directly crashed into a certain place in the absolute blood world. Not good. The expressions of the few Rizhao changed drastically. They originally thought that the Fengsuan mountain would escape quickly after breaking free of the ancestral weapon's suppression. After all, this was a rare opportunity. If they missed this opportunity, when they activated the ancestral weapon's power again, it would be a stalemate like before. Who would have thought that the Fengsuan mountain had no intention of leaving, and instead crashed directly into the domain? If it was just a small fake mountain meteorite crashing into the domain, it wouldn't be a big deal, and it wouldn't cause too much of an impact to the absolute blood world. However, this wasn't just a fake mountain meteorite. It was the Fengsuan mountain, an entire domain. A loud boom rang out. The sound was so violent that even the Rizhao had never heard of it before. In the next moment, a sound even more terrifying than when the ancestral power was awakened spread out from the point of impact. At the point of impact, everything within a radius of tens of thousands of miles became barren, and all life was wiped out. The terrifying impact swept out, and more casualties continued to increase. Many blood race members who were lucky enough to survive the previous changes couldn't escape this time. They didn't even have time to react before they were turned into dust. Looking from the starry sky, the huge absolute blood world was knocked out of its original position in an instant. Rizhao couldn't help but cry out, "Ancestor, why did you abandon your people?" Today's change in the domain was the result of the ancestral power's awakening. This was originally a happy occasion for the blood race, but because the timing wasn't right, the happy occasion turned into a disaster. Enemy attack! An angry shout rang out, and Rizhao's aura suddenly descended. It was Yu Qinglu leading the 8 Rizhao from the little human race into the absolute blood world. They had received instructions from Lu Ye's talent tree clone, and had left the Fengsuan mountain to make preparations. They had seen the changes in the entire absolute blood world clearly from afar. Their original goal was to harass the blood race's Rizhao, while Lu Yi was exerting his power, so that the Fengsuan mountain could break free from the absolute blood world's restraint and escape. However, things went too smoothly, and the little human race was in no hurry to leave. Since the blood race was so hospitable, they would enter the world to take a look. Lu Ye's talent tree clone even slightly controlled the Fengsuan mountain, changing its trajectory. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been so easy for the Fengsuan mountain to crash into the absolute blood world. Taking advantage of the chaos in the absolute blood world, the 8 Rizhao from the little human race arrived with murderous intent. Not only that, the domain was still shaking. From the Fengsuan mountain that crashed into the absolute blood world, figures rushed out. It was the little human race's cultivator army. The war had completely broken out, but the situation was completely different from when the blood race invaded the Fengsuan mountain. At this moment, the roles of the attacking and defending sides were reversed, and the blood race became the passive side. At this time, in the absolute blood world, Lu Yi was sitting in the underground blood river, his mind radiating out to the entire domain. His eyes were closed, but there was a happy expression on his face. He was like a child who had gotten a new toy. At this moment, he felt incomparably novel. His main body, and the 7 treasured blood clones, had indeed broken the restraint brought by the blood race's ancestral artifact, and successfully mobilized the absolute blood world. After the blood race's Rizhao no longer used the ancestral artifact's power, mobilizing the absolute blood world became much easier. To put it bluntly, the process of mobilizing the absolute blood world was like controlling a special magic treasure, and this magic treasure was one of the blood ancestor's arms. He could control this arm to clench it into a fist, and he could also control it to bend and straighten it. There was a sense of estrangement, and it wasn't as easy as controlling a finger. However, it was this simple manipulation that had brought about a calamity to all living beings in an entire realm. Lu Yi even had a feeling that he could really use this entire domain as an arm and wave it around. If any behemoth were to attack from the starry sky, he would be able to use this domain to fight it off. There were too many things to try and understand, but there was no time for that now. The war had already broken out, and the little human race had the absolute advantage. Under Rizhao's lair, after the unforeseen event just now, the blood race had suffered countless casualties, and even many of the constellations were injured. The elites of the little human race had all come out, and the blood race was directly beaten into a daze. Most of the blood race had no power to resist at all, and the few who could resist were quickly encircled and annihilated. On the battlefield, Rizhao's side had 8 against 6, and they also had the advantage. However, it wasn't so easy to kill the blood race's Rizhao. In the sea of blood, the blood race's Rizhao's figure appeared and disappeared. It was difficult for the little human race's Rizhao to accurately grasp it, and it was even more inappropriate to rush in rashly. They could only fight and slowly look for a good opportunity. End of chapter. Chapter 1834. While the battle was in full swing, Lu Ye's mind quietly locked onto one of the vampires' Rizhao. He tried to mobilize the foundation of the blood extinction realm to suppress him, just like how he suppressed the insect Rizhao in the inner world. If he could do it, all 6 of them would die here. But he soon realized that he was overthinking. He could mobilize the foundation of the inner world to suppress the insect Rizhao, because he had refined the core origin. However, he couldn't do it now. Although he could mobilize the entire realm with the power of the blood ancestor's precious blood, it was impossible for him to precisely control the foundation of the blood absolute world, to suppress the blood ancestor's sunshine, unless he refined the origin of the blood absolute world. The world of absolute blood definitely had an origin, but not all domain origins could be refined. Some domain origins were scattered in every corner of the world of absolute blood. They had merged with the world of absolute blood, and could not be refined. Only in this way would there be a possibility of refining the core origin. From this point of view, the origin of the 9 regions could also be refined, but Lu Yi had never thought of it, because refining the origin of the 9 regions was equivalent to refining Little 9, unable to use the foundation of the blood extinction realm to suppress the enemy. Lu Yi could only do it himself. Because of the collision, he stopped at Fengsuan Mountain in the south of the blood extinction realm. His talent tree clone suddenly flashed out, and then he activated his magic power. The lines under his feet were outlined and embedded, and in the blink of an eye, a void spirit pattern was formed. Ripples appeared in the spirit pattern, and Lu Ye's original body stepped out. Raising his hand and putting away the talent tree clone, Lu Yi looked up at the battlefield closest to him. A sea of blood was surging over there, and Rizhao was hiding in it. The one fighting against him was Chun Xianhai from the east. At this moment, he was holding a rune sword in his hand, and as his body moved, he shot out sword chi toward the sea of blood. The sea of blood chased after him, trying to swallow him, but he dodged it time and time again. He naturally knew that it was not good to rashly enter the enemy's sea of blood when fighting against the blood extinction realm. Now that his side had the upper hand, Chun Xianhai was not anxious at all. He only needed to delay like this. When the time came, only the opponent would be anxious to win. And once the opponent was anxious, he would definitely reveal a flaw. At this moment, Chen Xuanhai's expression changed. He dodged an attack from his opponent and turned his head to look in a certain direction. In that direction, an inconspicuous imperial equipment suddenly flew over. Chen Xianhai grabbed the imperial equipment in his hand. "Caught you!" The blood descendant Rizhao shouted, and the blood sea suddenly expanded. In an instant, Chen Xianhai, who was caught off guard, was covered by the blood sea. Rizhao of the Blood Clan was overjoyed that he had succeeded in killing Chen Xianhai. He never thought that the opportunity he had been searching for would arrive so soon. Just as he was about to launch an attack on Chen Xianhai, he suddenly felt a wave of magical energy from the blood sea that belonged to a mid-stage moon jade. This made him a little puzzled, as he didn't know what was going on. He spread out his mind and immediately found the source of the magic power fluctuation. It was the dagger in Chen Xuanhai's hand. Even though he knew that there was something fishy going on, Blood Tribe Rizhao still didn't take it seriously. After all, even if there was something fishy going on, Yu Yao's mid-stage magical energy fluctuations couldn't be faked. How much of a threat could she pose to him? With the cover of the blood sea, Rizhao easily arrived behind Chen Xianhai. His long blood-red fingernails glowed with a cold light as he raised them up high, ready to launch a fatal attack on Chen Xianhai. At that moment, he suddenly saw a flash of light on the imperial equipment in Chen Xuanhai's hand. A mysterious spiritual pattern appeared, and then a figure appeared. It was a young human. The magic power fluctuations on his body were exactly the same as the magic power fluctuations on the imperial equipment. He was sure that this was the owner of the imperial equipment. Rizhao of the Blood Clan didn't understand how the other party had arrived. He didn't sense any signs of the blood sea being broken through. How did this mid-stage moon jade appear so mysteriously? He secretly guessed that the other party had mastered some kind of exquisite teleportation technique. But so what? Anyone who dares to barge into my blood sea is courting death. With this thought in mind, he didn't show any mercy. Lu Yi suddenly raised his head and looked in the direction of Rizhao of the Blood Clan. As their eyes met, Lu Ye's eyes suddenly turned blood-red. Countless fine and intricate lines intertwined, forming an extremely complex and strange pattern above his pupils. "Ah!" Rizhao of the Blood Clan cried out in alarm. Not far away, the mid-stage moon jade's figure suddenly grew taller, turning into a towering giant. She looked down at him from above. He even felt a natural suppression from those blood-red eyes, causing his heart to palpitate with fear. Even the blood in his body stopped flowing at this moment. Under the influence of those eyes, the momentum of his attack suddenly stagnated. In the next moment, something that Rizhao of the Blood Clan couldn't understand happened. A terrifying and dense holy aura suddenly erupted from the mid-stage moon jade's body. Under this natural suppression, his magic power stagnated, and his momentum fell sharply. His attack, which had already been weakened by the impact of the blood-red eyes, became weak and powerless in an instant. Chen Xianhai also turned around at this moment. The talisman sword in his hand seemed light as it slashed down, but it was actually a burst of power. He couldn't help but frown. This was because he felt that he wasn't cutting down Rizhao of the Blood Clan. Apart from the strength of his physical body, the other party's magic power was simply too weak. He easily broke through it. This slash directly cut Rizhao of the Blood Clan's body into two. Rizhao of the Blood Clan's eyes widened. He didn't even know how he died. He just stared at Lu Yi in horror, and opened his mouth, as if he wanted to say something. But Chen Xianhai didn't give him the chance. The talisman sword rose again, and cut him into pieces like tofu. Rizhao's aura was annihilated, and the vast sea of blood also collapsed, turning into a rain of blood. "Well done!" Chen Xianhai praised. He grabbed Lu Ye's arm, and rushed to the next battlefield. Of course, he knew that killing Rizhao so easily wasn't because he had become stronger, but because his opponent had become weaker. The reason for all of this was none other than Lu Ye's methods. The Blood Clan was a race that rose and fell because of their bloodline. Chen Xianhai could almost foresee the miserable life of the Blood Clan in the starry sky in the future. With a strange existence like Lu Yi, no Blood Clan member would have a good ending if they ran into him. At this moment, Lu Yi was recalling everything that had happened just now. Activating the Blood Eye Spirit Tattoo against the Blood Clan's Rizhao was a sudden inspiration. He wanted to see if this spirit tattoo had any miraculous effect against the Blood Clan. After all, the spirit tattoo originated from the Blood Ancestor. After this test, the results were truly unexpected. According to his previous understanding, the Blood Eye Spirit Tattoo was an invisible soul attack. Strictly speaking, it was actually a divine tattoo. Its function was to cause the enemy to hallucinate when attacking their soul, which in turn affected their judgment during battle. It could be regarded as an auxiliary method. Logically speaking, using the Blood Eye Spirit Tattoo against Rizhao shouldn't have any effect, because the latter's soul power was far superior to his. His soul defense alone should have been enough to offset the effects of the Blood Eye Spirit Tattoo. However, Rizhao of the Blood Eye Spirit Tattoo was obviously affected. Although the effect wasn't great, it was enough to kill him. This was probably because the Blood Eye Spirit Tattoo originated from the Blood Ancestor. The Blood Clan was the descendant of the Blood Ancestor, so the power of the Blood Ancestor would have a certain degree of miraculous effect on the Blood Clan. Perhaps he could test it out with Xiang Yin and her sister. They were the first generation of the Blood Clan, and his blood servants. The feedback they could provide would undoubtedly be more specific. As these thoughts flashed through his mind, Chen Xianhai had already brought him to the second Rizhao's battlefield. This time, it was Wang Xiong from the west against another Blood Clan member, Rizhao. When Chen Xianhai and Lu Yi arrived, Wang Xiong had already charged into the Blood Sea and was confronting the Blood Clan member head-on. The two sides were locked in a fierce battle. Wang Xiong was obviously at a disadvantage, but his momentum was unstoppable. Sensing Chen Xuanhai's arrival, Rizhao of the Blood Clan couldn't help but panic. In a one-on-one battle, he could have the upper hand with the power of the Blood Sea. But in a two-on-one battle, he didn't have the confidence to do so. He wanted to shake off Wang Xiong, but the latter wouldn't give him the chance. He kept pestering him with all his might. When Chen Xianhai joined in, Rizhao of the Blood Clan was immediately at a disadvantage. The thick Blood Sea was turbulent, and the blood qi evaporated. Lu Yi found an opportunity to activate his divine attribute. Rizhao of the Blood Clan immediately let out a cry of surprise. He finally understood how his companion had died. He also finally understood why the Blood Clan had suffered so many casualties when they invaded Mount Fangsuan. There was an existence with such a terrifying divine attribute hidden among the enemy, and the Blood Clan didn't know about it. This was simply ironic. The second Blood Clan member, Rizhao of the Blood Clan, was quickly killed, the Blood Sea collapsed, and Chen Xianhai, Wang Xiong, and Lu Ye's figures appeared. Lu Yi looked around, but there was no trace of Rizhao of the Blood Clan. Even Rizhao of the Hominid clan was nowhere to be seen. He knew that Rizhao of the Blood Clan must have escaped, and the Hominid clan was probably chasing after him. It was reasonable. 2 of the 6 Blood Clan members had already died. Moreover, in the eyes of the few Rizhao who were still alive, their companion's death was too sudden and too inexplicable. It wasn't difficult for them to deduce that the Hominid clan had a method to quickly kill Rizhao of the Blood Clan. Driven by the fear of the unknown, and driven by their survival instincts, how could the 4 Rizhao who were still alive wait for death in the same place? They didn't run before, because this was the realm where they were born. As long as there was a glimmer of hope, they wouldn't run. But now, they had no choice but to run. If they stayed, they would follow in the footsteps of their companion. As long as they weren't idiots, they wouldn't stay and wait for death. Run. Don't even think about escaping. Wang Xiong's face was full of indignation. As he spoke, he chased in a certain direction. Obviously, he didn't want to let any of the Blood Clan members go. Chen Xuanhai's divine telekinesis suddenly scanned the area, and he also led Lu Yi in another direction. Lu Yi didn't stop them, but he felt that the chances of chasing after them weren't high. The Blood Clan's ability to escape was top-notch, especially Rizhao of the Blood Clan. In the early stages, when he was focused on escaping, the Hominid clan didn't have any good methods to deal with him. End of chapter. Chapter 1835. Sure enough, Chen Xuanhai's pursuit was fruitless. He obviously knew that continuing the pursuit would be a waste of time, so he returned to the Blood Extinction Realm with Lu Yi. The vampires suffered a great defeat in the Sunshine Realm. Of the 6 Sunshine Realm cultivators, 2 were killed and 4 escaped. If the 3 Sunshine Realm cultivators who were killed in the Southern Heart Mountain were included, more than half of the 9 Sunshine Realm cultivators, in the Blood Extinction Realm, had died in just a few days. This was an unimaginable and rare achievement. In fact, there were very few casualties in the Sunshine Realm, let alone such a large number of casualties. In the Blood Extinction Realm, the flames of war were swirling. The Sunshine Realm cultivators either died or fled. How could the remaining vampires have any fighting spirit and morale? Those who were quick to react had already escaped the realm, and those who were slow to react could only be killed. With the return of the Sunshine Realm cultivators, the elimination of the vampires in the Blood Extinction Realm became more thorough. A large number of vampires were killed, and in just a few days, there was almost no vampires left in the entire realm. Not only that, the flames of war began to spread throughout the Blood Extinction Galaxy. The Blood Extinction Galaxy was a rich galaxy with many large and small realms. These realms had always been under the bloody rule of the Blood Extinction Realm, and were bullied and oppressed by the vampires. The creatures in these realms could be regarded as food for the vampires, and their lives were miserable. Now that the Blood Extinction Realm had been destroyed, although the Miniman tribe couldn't kill all of them, they wouldn't let the vampires in other realms go. The Sunshine Realm cultivators rushed into the depths of the starry sky in groups of 2. Soon, all the realms in the entire galaxy were killed if they encountered any vampires. The Miniman tribe and the vampires had a feud. The division of Heart Mountain was the work of the Blood Ancestor. This information had been recorded in the Rest Abyss Pavilion, and was engraved in the hearts of the Miniman tribe for generations. Unfortunately, with the division of Heart Mountain, the Miniman tribe also fell apart. Coupled with the special wandering method of the various tribes in Heart Mountain, they never had a chance to take revenge after so many years. This time, the destruction of the Blood Extinction Realm could be said to be a massacre to their heart's content, and they also ruthlessly vented the resentment in their hearts. Throughout the Southern Heart Mountain, the Miniman tribe cheered and felt that their Sunshine Realm cultivators were superior. As Sunshine Realm cultivators, the vampire Sunshine Realm cultivators were nothing. Only a small number of people knew that the reason for this decisive victory was not because of the humanoids themselves, but because of the human Lu Yi. At this moment, Lu Yi was sitting cross-legged at the spot where the altar had once been. A several dozen meter-long bronze pestle was placed across his knees, his eyes closed in concentration. This thing was an ancestral weapon of the blood race, and according to Lu Ye's understanding, it was something left behind by the blood ancestor. That was why the blood race could use it to mobilize the power of realms. Previously, under his control, the Six-Finger Mountain had turned from a palm to a fist. The mountain had collapsed, and the altar had been buried. The ancestral artifact had also been buried deep underground. It wasn't easy for him to dig it out. He wanted to find out what was so special about this item, that it could make several vampires, who weren't the masters of the domain, work together to mobilize the power of the domain. However, the strange thing was that no matter how he inspected it, he was actually unable to discern anything special about this pestle. It was like an ordinary treasure that had been passed down from ancient times, and it didn't emanate any energy fluctuations. However, Lu Yi could rely on this pestle to strengthen his connection with the entire Blood Extinction Realm. In other words, he could also use this item to mobilize the domain like the vampires did. Perhaps it was because he had refined the blood of the blood ancestor, but he could do it better and more easily than the vampires. Previously, when he mobilized the domain, he needed to go deep into some specific locations in the Blood Extinction Realm's underground blood river, using his true body and the 7 blood clones. But now he didn't need to. With the pestle in hand, he could do the same thing. If the previous method was compared to Lu Yi wearing the entire Blood Extinction Realm on his body and turning it into something like armor, then using the ancestral artifact to mobilize the domain was like turning the Blood Extinction Realm into a marionette. The method of mobilizing and controlling the domain was different, but the result was the same. Presumably those vampires Nicho had done the same. With the help of the ancestral artifact, the blood extinction world had become a puppet in their hands. Lu Yi still remembered that under the control of those Nicho, the six-fingered mountain shook slightly and pushed out a huge bloody handprint toward the starry sky. The power of the handprint injured the 8 Nicho of the hominid clan and forced them to retreat in a sorry state. The power of that blow was extremely terrifying. He could also do this now. Lu Ye's heart was burning. Although the blood extinction realm was a domain, with his current means, he could completely use this domain as a killing weapon. If he could shrink the blood extinction realm and carry it with him at all times, why would he need to be afraid of Rizhao? That day on the 10,000 Elephant Sea, Lu Yi still remembered the terrifying pressure from Yuan. The road of cultivation was long, and before he had enough strength, many external forces were indispensable. Unfortunately, he could only think about it. The blood extinction realm was a domain, and its size was not small. It was not a magical weapon, so Lu Yi certainly couldn't carry it with him at all times. In his imagination, Lu Yi suddenly had a flash of inspiration. If he could bring the blood extinction realm back to the 9 regions, it seemed to be a good idea. Although the 9 regions already had the backing of Mount Fangsuan, and basically had no worries about self-protection, who would complain about having more means of self-protection? If he could really bring the blood extinction realm back to the 9 regions, the 9 regions would undoubtedly have another powerful means of self-protection. In addition, the blood extinction realm and the blood extinction realm were of the same origin, and were both part of the blood ancestor's body. Lu Yi had tried to mobilize the blood extinction realm before, but to no avail. The reason why he didn't continue to try was that he felt that with his current strength, it was too difficult. Secondly, he felt that even if he succeeded, it would be meaningless. The entire blood extinction realm was just a torso without a head and limbs. Even if he could mobilize it, what could he do? But if he could bring the blood extinction realm back, the huge torso would have an arm to wave. Just imagine, if the torso of the blood extinction realm waved the arm of the blood extinction realm. How magnificent would the scene be? Who would be able to block such a terrifying attack? Of course, if he really wanted to do this, his cultivation must be greatly improved, otherwise, it would be impossible. But cultivation could be slowly accumulated, and if he missed this opportunity, it would be difficult to encounter it again in the future. As soon as this idea arose, he could no longer suppress it. He wanted to bring the blood extinction realm back to the 9 regions. It was very difficult to achieve this. The migration of a domain was not a joke, but it was not without hope. For the next period of time, Lu Yi had been busy with this matter. A month after Mount Fangsuan hit the blood extinction realm in the south, the Rizhao who went out to clean up the blood race returned one after another. During this period of time, the 8 of them went to various parts of the galaxy, passed through one domain after another, and killed all the blood race they could find. In those many domains, the creatures of various races who had been enslaved and oppressed by the blood race for countless years all bowed down to them in gratitude. In the blood extinction realm, in the palace that originally belonged to some blood race's Rizhao, the 8 Rizhao of the humanoid race gathered. After the great battle, the palace was also affected, but fortunately, it did not completely collapse and could still be used. After a long time, Yu Qinglu sighed. If we don't remove the roots, what we have done today will not be able to solve the problem at its root. During this period of time, although the blood race had suffered heavy casualties, there were still 4 Rizhao of the blood race who escaped with their lives, as well as some Yu Yao and Xing mansions. They must have gone into hiding or escaped from this galaxy, which was why the Rizhao of the humanoid race could not find their whereabouts. In the short term, they would not dare to come back, but the humanoid race could not stay here forever. They had to continue on their journey, and the blood race also knew this. Once the humanoid race left, the Rizhao of the blood race and the other Yu Yao and Xing mansions would return, and the many domains they had saved today would fall into the hands of the blood race again. There's nothing we can do about it. Zhang Kuan sighed. There are so many living beings in so many domains. We can't take them all away, but we can't leave them behind either. Our race has already done everything we can. Everyone was silent. Although they knew that the future would be like what they had imagined, they still found it hard to accept. When they were exterminating the blood race this time, they had personally witnessed the tragic lives of many living beings. Some races that had been oppressed were literally reared like animals. "There's a way." A voice suddenly came from outside the palace. Everyone knew who had come without even looking. Lu Yi stepped in, and Wang Xiong immediately greeted him warmly. "Junior brother Lu. Junior brother. Junior brother Lu." Greetings rang out one after another. In the entire galaxy, Lu Yi was probably the only one who could make so many Rizhao warmly welcome Yu Yao. "Greetings, senior brothers and sisters." Lu Yi bowed in all directions. He looked up and saw Su Yuqing waving at him, indicating for her to sit over there. Lu Yi walked over and sat down beside Su Yuqing. "What have you been busy with recently? I heard from Xiang Yin that we haven't even seen your shadow." Su Yuqing asked. She had looked for Lu Yi when she came back, but she couldn't find him. She had asked Xiang Yin and Xiang Yin, but they said that they didn't know either. If Lu Yi hadn't taken the initiative to appear now, Su Yuqing really wouldn't have known where to look for him. "I've been busy with something important," Lu Yi said mysteriously. The group of Rizhao became interested. Yu Qinglu said, "Junior brother, is the thing you're talking about related to what you said just now?" "That's right." Lu Yi nodded. Chen Xianhai raised his eyebrows. "Junior brother, do you have a way to solve the problem that this galaxy will face in the future?" It was undeniable that Lu Yi had a unique advantage when it came to dealing with the blood race. However, killing the enemy was one thing, and dealing with the aftermath was another. The group of Rizhao gathered here were all at their wits' end. They didn't have a solution, but Lu Yi seemed to be very confident. Chapter 1836. Within the palace, Zhu Rizhao looked at Lu Yi with great interest. Since Lu Yi dared to say this, he must be confident. The Rizhao were all looking forward to it. If there really was a way to solve the problem at its root, it would be a relief. As for whether he could do it or not, he had already found the core of Mount Fangxuan. He had already proven his abilities. Lu Yi didn't beat around the bush. It's very simple. It doesn't matter if we can't take away so many creatures. We just need to take away the entire blood extinction realm. As soon as he said this, the hall fell silent. It had to be said that Lu Yi's idea was very bold. This was something the Rizhao had never thought of. But thinking about it carefully, it was indeed a good idea. The blood extinction realm was the foundation of the blood race's survival in this galaxy. Why hadn't anyone come to exterminate the blood race after so many years? It was because of the existence of the blood extinction realm. The Rizhao of the blood race could mobilize the power of the realm to defend against external enemies. The Rizhao of the hominid race had suffered a loss before. If this foundation was destroyed, the blood race would become a tree without roots and water without a source. Even if they could survive in other realms, they would lose their strongest means of defending against external enemies. At that time, the hominid race wouldn't even need to do anything. They would only need to leak some crucial information, and there would naturally be factions who had a grudge against the blood race. The blood race would no longer have a foothold in this galaxy. After a while, Yu Qinglu said, "I know Junior Brother has brought back the core before, but the inner world is completely different from the blood extinction realm. Junior Brother, are you confident you can control the blood extinction realm?" Although the inner world was also a realm, it didn't look too big from the outside. Lu Yi had refined the core's origin, so he could naturally control it like a star boat. The blood extinction realm was different. It was so big, and Lu Yi hadn't refined its origin, so he couldn't use the same trick. Lu Yi said, "I don't need to control this realm." Not to mention that he couldn't do it. Even if he could, it would take many years to bring the blood extinction realm back to the 9 states from this position. He didn't have the time to do this. Chen Xianhai was curious. "If you don't control this realm, how will you bring it away?" Lu Yi immediately explained his plan. The Rizhao of the Rizhao were dumbfounded. He had to admit that this plan was a little whimsical, but he had to admit that this plan was really feasible. Lu Yi came here mainly to explain his plan to Rizhao. After all, the most crucial part of this plan was Mount Fangxuan in the south. Rizhao had the right to know. After listening to Lu Ye's explanation, Yu Qinglu pondered for a moment before nodding. Since junior brother has an idea, then go ahead and do it. If we can really save the creatures of this star system from the sea of suffering, that is also the hope of my little human race. Many thanks, senior brother. I'll take my leave now, Lu Yi said and left the hall in a flash. At the same time, the 7 doppelgangers who had been searching deep underground returned one after another. During this time, the 7 treasured blood clones had been searching underground. Lu Yi wanted to see if there were any remnants of the blood ancestors' treasured blood in this world. In the inner world, there was a drop of the blood ancestors' blood. That thing had even given birth to an ignorant spirit. There was also a drop in the blood refinement realm, but it was suppressed by an ancient seal. Today that drop of blood was very incomplete. These 2 drops of blood had been refined by Lu Yi and strengthened his divine nature. Therefore, Lu Yi wanted to know if there was any in the blood refinement realm. Unfortunately, during this period of searching he had found nothing. It seemed that there was none. Lu Yi was not disappointed. The greatest benefit of refining the blood ancestors' treasured blood was the improvement of his divine nature. At present, his divine nature was strong enough to crush any vampire. It would be good if he could find it, but it didn't matter if he couldn't. When the treasured blood clones returned, Lu Yi condensed his talent tree doppelganger and let it enter Mount Fangsuan in the south to control the south in place of his original body. When everything was ready, he began to implement his plan. He took out the long pestle ancestral artifact, and his divine nature surged and boiled. Soon the realm hummed and shook. Looking at it from the starry sky, the absolute blood world was still in the shape of a clenched fist with its forearms raised. However, with Lu Ye's urging, the clenched fist slowly unclenched, and the raised arm straightened. At the same time, Mount Fangsuan in the south, which had been stopped in the blood refinement realm because of the collision, also began to move under the control of the talent tree doppelganger. Because after colliding with the blood refinement realm, the talent tree doppelganger immediately used the power of the realm lord to seal the entire Mount Fangsuan in the south. Therefore, for the past month, the south was not attracted by the core, which was why it could stay in the blood refinement realm. Otherwise, under the core's guidance, the south would have left long ago. Under the control of his original body and the talent tree doppelganger, the 2 realms moved respectively. Slowly, Mount Fangsuan in the south moved to the open palm of the blood refinement realm. After a fierce collision, it was embedded halfway up the 6-finger mountain, which was the position of the palm. The open palm closed again. Looking at the posture, it was like a big hand grabbing a grain of sand. After a brief investigation, and confirming that everything was correct, the talent tree doppelganger guarding Mount Fangsuan in the south released the seal on the realm. In an instant, the core's guidance force from the distant starry sky came, and Mount Fangsuan in the south began to show signs of drifting toward the core. However, because the entire Mount Fangsuan in the south was embedded in the palm, its movement immediately led the blood refinement realm to move. The speed was very slow, but it was indeed moving. Sensing this change, Lu Yi raised his eyebrows. Although the situation would indeed develop like this in his deduction, he did not expect it to go so smoothly. In his plan, it was unrealistic to rely on himself to control the blood refinement realm and bring the entire realm back to the 9 states. Doing so would be a waste of time and energy. The end of Mount Fangsuan in the south was the 9 states. This was a very good target to borrow strength from. So he only needed to keep the blood refinement realm and Mount Fangsuan in the south moving in the same direction. By embedding Mount Fangsuan in the blood refinement realm, the movement of Mount Fangsuan in the south would lead the blood refinement realm. This was equivalent to letting Mount Fangsuan in the south bring the blood refinement realm back. When the south reached the 9 states, the blood refinement realm would also arrive. Time passed, and the straightened giant arm moved faster and faster in the starry sky. During this period, Lu Yi took the initiative to help. On his original body's side, he could use the ancestral artifact to slightly activate the blood refinement realm and increase its speed. On the talent tree doppelganger's side, he could freely control Mount Fangsuan in the south. In this way, Increasing the speed became very simple. Only when the speed reached a limit did Lu Yi stop. The changes in the entire realm were seen by the Rizhao. Although they had already seen the whole picture when Lu Yi explained the plan, when the plan was actually implemented, they were still amazed. Since ancient times, such a bizarre thing had never happened in the starry sky. Still in the palace hall, the Rizhao gathered together. Unlike last time, they were all smiling. Lu Yi had taken away the blood refinement realm, which was equivalent to destroying a foundation realm of the blood race. In the entire starry sky, the blood race only had a total of 5 foundation realms. Losing one was an unbearable pain for the entire blood race. A normal war was nothing more than killing, but Lu Ye's side had completely destroyed the enemy's realm. This was really satisfying. It was far more exciting than killing some blood race members before. In this way, those fleeing blood race cultivators would no longer have a chance to occupy this galaxy in the future. The many realms in this galaxy would also be saved. As for where those fleeing blood race members would go in the future, there was no need to think about it. They could only go to the other 4 foundation realms. This would probably be a long and arduous journey, and there would be many obstacles along the way. It was unknown how many blood race members would be able to arrive safely. Unfortunately, there are no foundation realms near my western route. Otherwise, I would be able to vent my anger. Zhang Kuan sighed with regret. With the support method unique to the humanoid race, and Lu Ye's miraculous methods, if there really was a foundation realm of the blood race blocking Mount Fengsuan in the west, it would definitely not end well. When Lu Yi heard this, he immediately revealed a disappointed expression. He originally wanted to ask about this matter, but now he didn't. Yu Qinglu said, "This matter is not urgent. After Mount Fengsuan is unified, we can properly discuss how to deal with the blood race. This race should also be wiped out from the starry sky." His words were calm, but they were filled with dense killing intent. The group of people looked forward to it. When the time came, they could even let Lu Yi drive the complete Mount Fengsuan to visit the foundation realms of the blood race, one by one, and completely eradicate them. In this way, not only would they be able to avenge their race, but they could also be said to have eliminated evil for the starry sky. When the time came, who knew how many galaxies and realms would be deeply grateful to the humanoid race? Lu Yi naturally didn't reject this matter. There was one piece of the blood ancestor's body in the 9 states. When the southern Mount Fengsuan went to the southern region, there would be a second piece. He also wanted to piece all the pieces together. If he could do this, he would be able to control the blood ancestor's body. What kind of armor could compare to this thing? But before that, there was one more thing to take care of. Senior brothers from the southern region, Mount Fengsuan is now moving towards the 9 states with the blood extinction realm. It might bring harm to some of the realms ahead. Therefore, I have to ask the southern region's senior brothers to carefully investigate the route ahead. If there are realms blocking the way, you must inform me immediately. Originally, Mount Fengsuan was moving through the starry sky, and basically wouldn't encounter such a situation. After all, Mount Fengsuan's body was very small. Some of the larger meteorites were bigger than Mount Fengsuan. Therefore, basically, there wouldn't be a sudden collision with a certain realm. But now it was different. Mount Fengsuan was also moving with the blood extinction realm. This thing was like a huge clenched fist. If it really collided with a certain realm, it would definitely cause a huge disaster. Lu Yi didn't want such a tragic thing to happen. If it really happened, then his sin would be great. Therefore, he had to take precautions. There's an urgent matter. I have to go out. End of chapter. Chapter 1837. It was not difficult to prevent this. He just had to let Rizhao from the dwarf clan scout ahead first. If there was really a realm blocking the way, he would inform Lu Yi in advance. Lu Yi could then rush over and manipulate the minuscule mountain and the world of absolute blood to change the direction of movement. This would prevent them from colliding with the realm. This was completely achievable, because Rizhao's speed was much faster than minuscule mountains. As long as Rizhao's scouting distance was far enough, Lu Yi would have enough time to deal with the situation. The few Rizhao in the south naturally agreed. Lu Yi stayed in the south for a few more days to make sure that the south and the world of absolute blood were on the right track. Then, under the lead of Su Yuqing and Chen Xianhai, he bid farewell to his senior brothers in the south. A few days later, the cultivators from the east who went to provide support all returned. Wu Qima, who stayed behind to guard the east, glanced at them and was stunned. Why is there an extra one? Although the cultivators from the east who went to provide support were all stronger than Yu Yao, it was normal for there to be casualties in a battle of that level. Wu Qima thought that there would be some casualties on the east side, but he found that not only were there no casualties, there were even more. This was ridiculous. The extra one was naturally Ding Beifeng. This guy was now Lu Ye's blood servant, so he naturally came back with Lu Yi. Wu Qima was still very concerned about the battle in the south, so he immediately communicated with Chen Xianhai through divine sense. When he learned about the battle and the final results, Wu Qima was shocked. Although he knew that with Lu Ye's help, it shouldn't be a problem for them to win against the world of absolute blood, he didn't expect that not only had the world of absolute blood suffered heavy casualties, but even 5 Rizhao had died in battle. In the end, even the world of absolute blood was taken away by Lu Yi. This was really beyond his imagination. Next time something like this happens, you stay behind and watch over it. I'll go kill the enemy. Wu Qima looked at Chen Xianhai. Killing the blood tribe's Rizhao was much more interesting than guarding a realm. We'll talk about it later. Chen Xianhai replied casually and slipped away, not giving Wu Qima a chance to pester him. Wu Qima immediately looked at Su Yuqing. The latter had already pulled Lu Yi away, leaving Wu Qima with only her beautiful back. You're bullying an honest person. Wu Qima had a helpless look on his face. Yu Yao, who was standing at the side, was secretly laughing. Wu Qima glared at her, and she hurriedly dispersed. Lu Yi stayed on the Immortal Spirit Peak for a few days before returning to the 9 states. Just as she appeared on the green bamboo peak of Blue Blood Sect, Little Nine came to find her, still in the form of a rabbit, suddenly appearing in front of Lu Yi. Isn't this the busy Lord Nine? What a rare guest. Lu Yi looked at it with a mocking expression. The rabbit's face was covered by fur, so he couldn't see if it was red or not. However, Little Nine's expression was a little awkward. What are you talking about? Lu Yi snorted and looked at him seriously for a while. She raised her eyebrows and asked, "Have you put on weight?" Compared to the first time Little Nine had appeared in front of him like this, Little Nine was clearly fatter now. Even its fur was glossier than before. Little Nine was like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. How could that be? This is called sturdiness. Among the fluffy fur, a small head poked out from behind Little Nine's neck. There was a small flower on top of her head, which looked like a hat. She wore a small green skirt, and her 2 big eyes were watery. Little Huanyang. Lu Yi smiled and greeted her. Yeah. Little Huanyang responded with a crisp voice. Little Huanyang was particularly afraid of strangers. It was not easy for the people of the Flower Clan to see her. Only Little Nine had a natural closeness to her. This might be because the process of the flower world attaching itself to the 9 states had prompted the birth of Little Huanyang. Fundamentally speaking, Little Huanyang's birth was due to Little Nine. After seeing Lu Yi with Little Nine several times, Little Huanyang and Lu Yi could be considered familiar. While speaking, Lu Yi bent down and held Little Huanyang in the palm of her hand. She raised her finger and tapped her head. Then she asked, "Why are you looking for me?" "Nothing. I felt that you were back, so I came to see you." Little Nine replied. Lu Yi didn't raise her head. "Do you know that when you lie, your eyes like to look around?" "Ah." Little Nine was surprised and quickly fixed her eyes. I didn't. Lu Yi put Little Huanyang down and placed her on Little Nine's neck. She knocked Little Nine's head and said, "If you have something to say, just say it. Don't beat around the bush." Little Nine raised her claws and wanted to cover her head, but her claws were too short to reach. After calming down, Little Nine said, "Lu Yi, the things you brought back last time can increase the foundation of a domain. If you have the chance, bring back more of them. They will be helpful to me and Huanyang. Now that the foundation of the blood-refining world and the Wushuang continent has been swallowed up, if 9 regions wants to grow quickly, we can only rely on external forces. Otherwise, relying on the nourishment of the starry sky's power alone will make the growth too slow. Judging from the current situation of 9 regions, its growth rate was faster than most of the domains in the starry sky. After all, after the flower world attaches itself to the 9 regions, they would complement each other. If the foundation of 9 regions increases by 100 every year, under the normal natural growth of 9 regions, then after the flower world attaches itself to them, this increase would become about 150. How many domains in this world had the flower world attaching itself to them? However, compared to the initial growth of 9 regions, even with the flower world attaching itself to them, the growth rate was not fast. After all, 9 regions could devour the foundation of the blood-refining world in the beginning, and then there was the Wuxia continent. After so many years, whether it was the blood-refining world or the Wuxia island, their foundation was almost completely devoured. Without the help of external forces, the growth of the domain naturally slowed down. Compared to the time when 9 regions had just been promoted to a large domain, the cultivation environment of 9 regions was much better now. Starting from the spirit stream realm to the spirit sea realm, the speed and efficiency of growth were far from comparable to the old group of cultivators. Even those ordinary people who could not cultivate could have their lifespan greatly extended. This was the benefit brought about by the better environment of the entire domain. But this still could not satisfy Little 9. Is it the world-devouring beast's monster core? Lu Yi asked. Little 9 shook her head. No, it's that pink tentacle. Lu Yi immediately understood what Little 9 was talking about. He could not help but say, that thing can only be encountered and not sought. It was luck that I was able to obtain it last time. What Little 9 was talking about was obviously the thing he had brought back from the Thousand Hills tomb. Back then, on his way back to the 9 states from the 10,000 Hills Sea, he had passed by the Thousand Hills tomb and encountered a huge blue bird. The blue bird had dug up a nebula of a grave and seemed to be looking for food. By chance, Lu Yi had found a tentacle-like thing that was several hundred feet long from the grave it had dug up. At that time, he had activated the power of the talent tree to refine it. As a result, he found that it contained a lot of energy. A tentacle that was dozens of feet long was worth millions of spirit jades. Later, he had brought that thing back to 9 regions, and it was taken away by Little 9. That thing could increase the foundation of a domain and help the growth of 9 regions. Lu Yi still remembered the shocking scene when the blue bird had dug up the grave nebula. The grave nebula that had been dug up seemed to come alive as pink tentacles reached out from it and bombarded the blue bird. The blue bird was an ancient giant species. It could easily withstand the bombardment of the pink tentacles, but Lu Yi could not. Hearing this, Little 9 could not help but reveal a disappointed expression. Lu Yi comforted. Later, I will go to the Thousand Hills Sea and see if there are any treasures that can increase the foundation of a domain. I will buy some back for you. That works too. After thinking for a while, Lu Yi asked, why are you in such a hurry to increase the foundation of 9 regions? Actually, if you and Little Huanyang complement each other, the speed of growth will not be too slow. Moreover, at present large domains already have the capital to nurture constellation cultivators. In the future, when the cultivators of this domain grow, we will have the qualifications to establish ourselves in the universe. Little 9 said, I naturally know this, but I am preparing to open up a true lake battlefield. And Lu Yi was stunned. True lake battlefield. 9 regions had the Spirit Stream battlefield and the Cloud River battlefield. Back then, Lu Yi had walked step by step. But when a cultivator reached the true lake stage, there was no specific battlefield that they could enter. In the past, the 2 camps fought endlessly. When a cultivator reached the true lake stage, they could choose to participate in the battle and enter the camp to earn resources for their own cultivation. But now that the situation had changed, many things had changed. Originally, I was going to discuss it with you in a few days, Little 9 said and immediately expressed his thoughts. Since the 2 camps of 9 regions had joined forces to conquer the blood-refining world in 9 regions, had been promoted to a large domain, the situation of the entire domain had changed to a great extent. The relationship between the two camps had also been unprecedentedly eased. Take those cultivators, who had now been promoted to constellation, as an example. After understanding the vastness and profoundness of the starry sky, they had long abandoned their camp and sect views. Because their cultivation base was high, their vision was far, and the competition within the domain was no longer what they pursued. Looking back, the competition within the domain was like a child's play. The goal of the cultivators above the constellation was now the starry sky universe. But the growth of cultivators in any domain must be accompanied by battles and bloodshed. Even those top domains were the same. No matter how good the cultivation environment of 9 regions was, if there were no battles, no matter how delicate the flowers raised in the greenhouse were, they would not be able to withstand the baptism of the starry sky. Therefore, the Spirit Stream battlefield and the Cloud River battlefield in 9 regions had been maintained as before. No matter how harmonious the high-level members of the major sects got along with each other, the disciples at the bottom still had to obtain the necessary cultivation resources in each other's confrontations. It was undeniable that no matter what kind of competition it was, it would breed hatred, but this was unavoidable in any domain. Other domains did not have battlefields at all levels, but the domain was not peaceful either. Cultivators attacked each other in units of sects and families, and they were also competing for cultivation resources. But no matter what kind of competition it was actually cultivating the blood of the cultivators. Otherwise, with only cultivation base and no fighting skills, entering the starry sky was just courting death. The more powerful a domain was, the more they would pay attention to the cultivation of the cultivators at the bottom. Because no matter which domain it was, the strong were the mainstay, but the cultivators at the bottom were the foundation of the domain. Seeing an obituary, a fellow cultivator had died of illness, and his heart was filled with grief. Let's hope that everyone is healthy. That is our greatest wealth. End of this chapter. Chapter 1838. On the side of the 9 continents. After the expedition to the blood-refining world, cultivators above the true lake stage could choose to enter the Wuxia continent to fight with the corpse race and obtain merits by killing them. However, the corpse race did not have the ability to reproduce. After so many years, the number of corpses in the Wuxia continent had long decreased. This directly led to a problem. For cultivators above the true lake stage, it became harder and harder to obtain merits. It was not like the beginning, when the entire Wuxia continent was filled with corpses, and one could obtain a large amount of merits just by killing them. According to Little Nine's prediction, the Wuxia continent would lose its qualification as a training ground in less than 10 years. By then, the 9 continents' cultivators would no longer have any corpse race to hunt. By then, how would the cultivators above the true lake stage cultivate? Without a channel to obtain merits, they would not be able to exchange for cultivation resources. This would definitely lead to a series of problems. Thus, Little Nine planned ahead and wanted to open up a battlefield for true lake stage cultivators. However, doing so would greatly deplete the foundation of the 9 continents. This was the reason why he came to find Lu Yi. He wanted to obtain more foundation to replenish his foundation. When Lu Yi heard this, he also realized that this was a problem. Actually, many years ago, Lu Yi had already thought about this. If there was a day when the corpse race in the Wuxia continent was completely wiped out, what would happen? Without the Wuxia continent as a training ground, the 9 continents' true lake stage cultivators would be in an awkward situation. Opening up a true lake battlefield was a solution. However, should he open up a Spirit Sea battlefield? To be honest, Lu Yi felt that it was not a big problem to allow the true lake stage cultivators to kill each other in a battlefield. However, if he allowed the Spirit Sea stage cultivators to do so, then it would be inappropriate. Even with the current environment of the 9 continents, it was not easy for cultivators to reach the Spirit Sea stage. Such a battle would definitely cause a large number of Spirit Sea cultivators to die. This would be a drain on the future of the 9 continents. After pondering for a while, Lu Yi asked, How long can the situation at the Wuxia continent last? Little Nine replied. Based on the recent exchange of merits, the Wuxia continent can last for about 10 more years. It will not exceed 15 years. There is no hurry to open up a true lake battlefield. Lu Yi said. I will go back and ask the cultivators of the other realms to see what kind of development model their realms have. If it is useful, we can learn a thing or two. Oh, Little Nine replied. Lu Yi thought of something and said, I remember that I entered some mystic realms in the past. Those mystic realms were created by you, right? Since that's the case, can you create some mystic realms suitable for cultivators above the true lake stage to train in? Little Nine said, of course. Actually, this type of secret realm has always existed. It's just that there aren't many of them. This is because opening and maintaining this type of secret realm would also deplete the foundation of this realm. If there are too many of them, it would be better to just open up the true lake battlefield. Lu Yi understood. Little Nine did indeed have the ability to create such a mystic domain, but it was not without cost. In the end, it was still a drain on the foundation of the domain. As for opening up the Divine Sea battlefield, that was even more taxing on his foundation. It would not be easy to completely solve this problem. Someone is coming. I'll take my leave first. Little Nine suddenly spoke, and then quickly disappeared along with Little Huanyang. Lu Yi looked up into the sky and vaguely sensed a familiar aura rapidly approaching. A moment later, she looked at the woman who had landed in front of her and greeted her. Why are you here? The person who had come was Su Yuqing. Su Yuqing turned her head and looked around. I came to take a look. Then she asked, is this the place where you grew up? My sect, Jade Blood Sect. It is indeed a place filled with spirit and beauty. Su Yuqing nodded slightly. To be able to receive such praise from her, it could be seen that Ao Mountain's scenery was beautiful. Of course, it could not be ruled out that it was because of Lu Yi. Accompanying Su Yuqing, she walked around Ao Mountain for a while. Half a day later, beside the Moon Lake, Lu Yi caught a few fat fish and set up a fire to roast them. While Lu Yi was busy, Su Yuqing sat quietly to the side. The sun was setting in the west, and the golden sunlight shone through the cracks of the mountain peak, illuminating the woman like a figure who walked out of a painting. She suddenly asked, is there something on your mind? Lu Yi looked up at her. The fish is burnt. Su Yuqing gestured. It was only then that Lu Yi smelled a burnt smell. She hurriedly flipped the grilled fish over. If there's anything you can tell me. I'm much older than you. Maybe there's something I can help you with. Lu Yi thought this made sense, so she moved closer to her and began to talk about the current predicament of the 9 regions. Su Yuqing listened quietly, and only then did she know what Lu Yi was thinking. She said, so you want to know how the 9 regions will develop in the future? For the 9 regions, the 2 major battlefields, Spirit Stream and Cloud River, are the best places for cultivators of the corresponding level to gain experience. In the past, when the 2 camps fought for a long time, the True Lake and Spirit Sea also had places to go. Since the 9 regions became a large domain, many things have changed. We are now the first generation of constellations in the 9 regions, and also bear the heavy responsibility of revitalizing the domain's future. The Wuxia continent won't be able to hold on for long. When the Corpse clan is destroyed, where will the cultivators above the True Lake go? Yuqing, how did your little human clan resolve this matter? Su Yuqing shook her head and said, the situation of our race is not suitable for you. The cultivators of our race do not have much competition, but more exchanges and learning from each other. Therefore, relatively speaking, the cultivators of our race, no matter what level they are at, lack some bloodlust and experience in battle, especially in a life and death battle. This was especially obvious when we fought with the blood race in the blood extreme world. Fortunately, our race is proficient in the Tao of Talismans, so we were able to make up for it. To put it bluntly, without the Tao of Talismans, the cultivators of our race would most likely lose if they fought with other races with the same cultivation level. Therefore, I think your consideration is right. Only by experiencing more life and death battles can we have a stronger ability to protect ourselves after entering the starry sky. The situation of the 9 regions was completely different from that of the little human clan. It could even be said that the situation faced by the cultivators of the vast majority of domains was different from that of the Little Human clan. Since the beginning of the Little Human clan's cultivation, they had always been in Fengsuan Mountain. As long as they did not leave, they rarely had to fight with other clans. Moreover, they had talismans with them. So even if they had lost their bloodlust and lacked experience in life and death battles, they could still establish a foothold in the starry sky. There were many battles in the domain, and life and death were commonplace. Although it would breed some hatred and death, it was beneficial to the future of the entire domain. So you agree to open up the True Lake battlefield and the Divine Sea battlefield? Lu Yi asked. Su Yuqing shook her head and said, "It doesn't matter whether I agree or not. This is ultimately a matter of your own domain. It still depends on your own choice." Lu Yi said seriously, "Maybe I can ask the cultivators of other domains and refer to their situation. This is a way, but the situation of each domain is different, and it may not be suitable for the 9 regions." As Su Yuqing spoke, she took a grilled fish from Lu Yi and took a bite. Then, as if thinking of something, she asked, "Have you heard of the Azura battlefield?" Lu Yi was stunned. "What's that?" "A starry sky treasure," Su Yuqing explained. Lu Yi's eyes lit up. "A starry sky treasure?" "Yes, this starry sky absolute treasure once belonged to a race called the Celestial Azura. This race was extremely warlike, and every one of them was gifted with intelligence and strength. In their heyday, this race conquered hundreds of galaxies, turning all the living beings in these galaxies into their slaves. The Azura field is the Celestial Azura race's greatest treasure. Once, this race went extinct." Lu Yi keenly sensed something. "It went extinct many years ago." Su Yuqing nodded. Lu Yi was a little surprised. How could such a powerful race go extinct? When things reach an extreme, they will move in the opposite direction. This is a common occurrence. No race in this world can flourish forever. The Heavenly Azura race was indeed powerful, but they had a major shortcoming, which was that they had difficulty reproducing and had few clansmen. Coupled with their warlike nature, who knows how many races they offended during their heyday? Under such circumstances, if they could maintain their prosperity, it would be fine. But once they showed any signs of decline, it would lead to an irreversible result. Everyone kicks a man when he's down. Lu Yi understood. A warlike race with few clansmen had enslaved hundreds of galaxies. Once there was a backlash, they would definitely be attacked by the masses. After the Heavenly Azura race went extinct, the Starry Sky Treasure, Azura Battlefield, remained in the main galaxy of the Heavenly Azura race. Lu Yi was surprised. No one covets the Starry Sky Treasure. Su Yuqing pursed her lips and smiled. Of course not. But no one has been able to refine this Starry Sky Treasure. Since ancient times, countless people have tried to refine it, but all of them returned without success. It can even be said that no one has found the original body of this Starry Sky Treasure. After countless years, only a legend has been left, saying that only those with the bloodline of the Heavenly Azura race can find this treasure and make it recognize them as its master. Because this was originally the Heavenly Azura race's greatest treasure. What do you mean by telling me this? Lu Yi looked at her in confusion. The Starry Sky Treasure was indeed good, but the two of them were clearly discussing the future development of the 9 regions. Lu Yi did not understand what the Azura battlefield had to do with the future of the 9 regions. The Azura battlefield is very strange. It was originally a treasure used by the Heavenly Azura race to train their clansmen. Legend has it that it contains endless secret realms, where cultivators can enter to train themselves. Moreover, the Heavenly Azura race seems to have stored a large number of treasures in the Azura battlefield. Cultivators who train through the secret realms can obtain some benefits. This was originally prepared for the clansmen of the Heavenly Azura race. When the Heavenly Azura race was about to be exterminated, they threw all the resources of the race into the Azura battlefield. Lu Yi's eyes lit up when he heard this. He had no way to personally experience how powerful the Heavenly Azura race was. But to be able to enslave hundreds of galaxies, how terrifying was the wealth they had accumulated. Before the Heavenly Azura race was exterminated, These countless years of accumulated wealth were all thrown into the Azura battlefield. End of chapter. Chapter 1839. Lu Yi didn't care too much about the wealth. At present, the 9 states had the 3-world island, and the speed of accumulating wealth was not slow. It was enough to meet the cultivation needs of the 9 states' cultivators. Even if he had more, he couldn't digest it in a short time. It was meaningless to convert it into strength. What he valued was the power of the Azura field itself. It contained endless secret realms that cultivators could enter to train. Wasn't this what the 9 states urgently needed? He asked again. What level of cultivator is suitable to enter the Azura field? Su Yuqing said. It is a starry sky treasure, so there are no restrictions. Cultivators of any level can enter it. The Azura field has its own mysteries. It will arrange for cultivators to enter secret realms suitable for their cultivation, to gain all kinds of benefits. Can it be entered under the sun? Of course. This is really a good thing. Lu Yi was drooling. If the 9 states had the Azura field, then the current problem would not be a problem at all. It could even be said that the 2 major battlefields of Ling-Ling-Shi and Yun, he didn't need to exist, because cultivators of these 2 levels could enter the Azura field to gain experience. However, although the treasure was good, it was useless to the 9 states. Lu Yi couldn't take the cultivators of the 9 states to the Azura field. As if reading Lu Ye's mind, Su Yuqing continued to explain. In the secret realms of the Azura field, if a cultivator can break through all kinds of difficulties, they will get a different number of Azura seals. This seal is unique to the Azura field and can't be taken out. It doesn't have much value, but cultivators can use this seal to connect to the Azura treasury and exchange for any resources or treasures they want. When Lu Yi heard this, he suddenly felt that this model was somewhat similar to the way cultivators of the 9 states used merits to exchange for cultivation resources from the Tianji treasury. It was not similar but exactly the same. However, there was no such thing as merits in the Azura field. Instead, there were Azura seals. It was the same principle. The resources in the Azura treasury were extremely rich. The entire Azura clan had enslaved hundreds of galaxies and accumulated wealth for countless years. It could be said that there were almost all kinds of treasures in the world. I don't know how many treasures there are in the Azura treasury. After all, I have never entered the Azura field, but as far as I know, there is a treasure in the Azura treasury that should be able to solve the problem of the 9 states. What treasure? The Azura field's attribute treasure can also be considered as a pseudo-ultimate treasure. Its power is similar to the Azura fields. It can create various secret realms for cultivators to enter and train. However, because it is an attribute treasure, it does not have the spirituality of the Azura field. It needs to be controlled by someone in order to be effective. Of course, it also does not have the Azura seal or the Azura treasury. Lu Yi finally understood why Su Yuqing had suddenly mentioned the Azura arena to him. He was no stranger to the attribute of a supreme treasure. The sword gourd was the attribute treasure of the vine of fortune. In this world, other than the sword gourd, there seemed to be a wind gourd, which was also nurtured by the vine of fortune. It was now controlled by a top realm, and was the realm stabilizing treasure of that realm. The minor constellation palace that he had placed under the 3-world island was also an attribute treasure of a supreme treasure. It was now constantly converting the water of the 10,000 elephant sea, creating the superior spiritual island that was the 3-world island. The Azura field also had an attribute treasure, and this attribute treasure was similar to the minor constellation palace, in that it inherited part of the power of a supreme treasure. As for the fact that it needed to be controlled by someone, this was not a problem at all. As long as he could bring back the Azura field's attribute treasure and give it to Little Nine, Little Nine would naturally be able to use it to its fullest potential. It could even be said that Little Nine could introduce the merit system into it and connect it to the Tianji treasury. From this point of view, if the 9 states had the Azura field's attribute treasure, it would definitely be able to use it to its fullest potential. It would be more beneficial than any other realm. Such a treasure, after so many years, Has no one succeeded in exchanging it? Lu Yi asked. Su Yuqing smiled faintly and said, although this treasure is good, first of all, it is useless in battle. Its main function is to help a clan develop and train its people. For those cultivators who are strong enough, it is not very useful. Take me for example. If I were to go to the Azura field and obtain the Azura seal, I would definitely exchange it for some treasures that are useful to me, and not that attribute treasure. Lu Yi nodded, knowing that this was indeed the case. Every realm had its own development model, so although he coveted the Azura field's attribute treasure, others might not be interested in it. Secondly, if you want to exchange for this attribute treasure, I'm afraid you will need a lot of Azura seals. I don't know exactly how many Azura seals are needed, because I have never seen one before. However, it is an attribute treasure of a supreme treasure, so it definitely won't be cheap. This is probably the main reason why this attribute treasure has not been exchanged for. There were countless treasures in the Azura treasury, and depending on the rarity of the treasure, the number of Azura seals needed to exchange for it would be different. An attribute treasure of a supreme treasure would definitely require an extremely large number of Azura seals. I'm telling you this because I feel that if there is a chance, you should go and take a look. With your background and strength, you should be able to gain some benefits from it. But you don't have to force yourself to exchange for the attribute treasure, Su Yuqing said. Lu Yi nodded. I understand. The Azura field was still very attractive to him. There were many mysteries in the starry sky, and even though he had seen many written records in the Shiyuan pavilion of the Xiaolian clan, those were only records. Many things were difficult to truly understand without seeing it with one's own eyes. He was still young, so there was naturally no harm in walking around and taking a look. When will you return to the Wanxiang Sea? Su Yuqing suddenly asked. Ever since she learned that Lu Yi was the successor of the Dao tree lineage, she knew the secret of Lu Ye's rapid cultivation progress. The Wanxiang Sea was undoubtedly the most suitable place for Lu Yi to cultivate, so even if this was Lu Ye's homeland, he could not stay for too long. We leave tomorrow. Hearing this, Su Yuqing took out a storage ring. When you go back, bring this to Haidang. There are some talisman crafting materials inside. Lu Yi took it. Also, you don't have to worry too much about the south. Even if there are really some domains blocking the way in the south, with the combined strength of the 3 Fengsuan mountains, and more than 10 Rizhao, we can barely change the direction of the south. There will definitely not be any collision with any domain. Lu Yi nodded. Then I'll have to trouble you. I'll come back to take a look every once in a while. At this point he suddenly thought of something. That's right, Yuqing, there's a place I want you to check out for me. Speak. Lu Yi took out a blank jade tablet and sketched on it as he explained to Su Yuqing. This is the 9 states. If you go in this direction, you will reach the Qingli Dao world. If you go further, you will enter a chaotic explosion zone. After passing through it, you will reach a starry wonder called the Thousand Hills Grave. There are many strange nebula burial mounds there, and there are some things inside that contain extremely rich energy that can help the domain grow. You are very knowledgeable. Help me see what those nebula burial mounds are. Okay. Su Yuqing agreed. But you have to be careful. Don't rashly attack those nebula burial mounds, because they seem to have the power to counterattack, and are extremely powerful. Also, there is an ancient giant species in the Thousand Hills Grave, and perhaps a dancer. You must avoid it. Although Su Yuqing was not weak, Lu Yi estimated that she was definitely not a match for either the green bird or the dancer. The strength of these two fellows seemed to have surpassed the scope of Rizhao. When the dancer passed by, the insect and blood races, and even Rizhao of the 4 directions star system were affected by her. It could be seen that the strange power of the dancer was not something Rizhao was immune to, and the green bird that could beat the dancer away could only be stronger. After seriously warning Su Yuqing for a while, she left. Although the opening of the True Lake battlefield was not urgent for the time being. If there was no other way after 10 years, the True Lake battlefield would have to be opened. This would be a great drain on the heritage of the 9 states. Lu Yi asked Su Yuqing to help investigate the situation in the Thousand Hills Grave, mainly to prepare for a rainy day. She did not necessarily want to obtain anything from there, but at least she wanted to learn more about it. Lu Yi called his 3 blood warriors and informed them that he was about to set off for the 10,000 Hills Sea. When the 3 blood warriors heard this, their expressions brightened, and they looked forward to it. They had heard of the famous 10,000 Hills Sea, and even the Xiangyin sisters had been there before. They knew how prosperous it was. When Lu Yi ordered the 3 of them to stay behind and watch over the 9 states, the blood warriors' expectations immediately turned into disappointment, but they did not dare to disobey. The reason why he did not take them to the 10,000 Hills Sea was mainly because there was no point in going there. According to the rules of the 10,000 Hills Sea, no more than 5 Yu Yao could be registered on each spirit island. There were already so many Yu Yao on the 3-world island, so even if he took them there, they would not be able to register. When the time came, they could only stay on the 3-world island without a name or status. Even if they encountered a spirit island battle, they would not be able to participate. It was better to let the 3 of them stay behind and watch over the 9 states. Although there were many powerhouses in the eastern minuscule mountain, the miniature humans rarely left the mountain, so he could not rely on them for everything. Therefore, after thinking about it, it was best to let the 3 of them stay behind. Whether it was the Xiangyin sisters or Ding Beifeng, they were all late-stage Yu Yao. If they stayed behind to watch over the 9 states, they would be able to ensure that the 9 states did not fall. Xiangyin looked at Lu Yi with a pitiful expression. "High Lord, do you really not need us sisters to serve you?" "No need." Lu Yi decisively refused. He was going to the 10,000 Hills Sea this time to prepare to break through to the late Yu Yao realm, so he did not need anyone to serve him. Moreover, he did not know what was going on with Wuxia. If that poisonous woman woke up and saw 2 beautiful Snow Clan women following him, he did not know how she would torture him. Lu Yi shuddered at the thought. "If this servant would be so bold, please grant High Lord a drop of saint blood." Xiangyin pursed her red lips, her expression becoming more and more pitiful, like a puppy begging for food. End of chapter. Chapter 1840. Lu Yi raised his head and glanced at Xiangyin. "Are you trying to negotiate with me?" Xiangyin hurriedly said. "We wouldn't dare. Since Great Master has given the order, we sisters will naturally go through water and tread on fire. We only hope that Great Master will take pity on us and grant us another drop of saint blood." "Great Master, if you want a horse to run, you have to feed the horse well, otherwise, you can take us sisters to the 10,000 Elephant Sea." Hearing this, Ding Beifeng couldn't help trembling in fear, glancing sideways at Xiangyin. A blood warrior daring to speak to his master in such a manner was truly beyond his imagination. What he didn't know was that the Xiangyin sisters had been with Lu Yi for a long time, and were well aware of his temperament, so they dared to speak to him in such a manner. Forget bargaining. She had even tried to seduce the great master, but unfortunately she had never succeeded. "Bold!" Lu Yi coldly snorted, causing Ding Beifeng's body to soften, and he almost fell to his knees. Xiangyin, on the other hand, began to act coquettishly. "Great Master, please take us to the 10,000 Elephant Sea." Lu Yi was speechless. He had received 4 blood warriors before, of which Ma Shangxi was extremely loyal. Xianyu had a cold temperament, and Ding Beifeng was even more so, showing extreme awe towards him. Only Xiangyin had a seductive air about her, completely unlike the cold and aloof Snow Clan. If her characteristics weren't so obvious, Lu Yi would have suspected she wasn't from the Snow Clan. Flicking his finger, 2 drops of saint blood flew out. Xiangyin's eyes lit up and she grabbed them, smiling happily. "Many thanks, Great Master." Although Xianyu didn't say anything, her cold expression clearly showed a hint of joy. "Scram!" Lu Yi waved his hand. Xiangyin immediately dashed into the distance. Lu Yi then turned to Ding Beifeng, who was still standing in place. "Do you want it too?" "I wouldn't dare." Ding Beifeng shrank his neck and immediately retreated. After a short while, the 3 blood warriors gathered together, the Xiangyin sisters each holding a drop of saint blood, feeling the divine attribute contained within it. Xiang Yin turned to Ding Beifeng and asked curiously, "Why didn't Great Master give it to you?" Ding Beifeng looked at her with an incredulous expression. "You're too bold. Saint blood isn't something you can refine at will, you're courting death." What was even more incomprehensible to him was that the High Lord had actually bestowed them with sacred blood. Did the High Lord not care about their lives at all? Xiang Yin looked at Ding Beifeng and sneered. "Idiot! You will never know what you missed out on." Perhaps refining a true saint's blood was a 9 out of 10 chance of dying, but refining Lu Ye's blood, as long as one's will was strong enough, they would only have to endure some pain. The risk was not as great as one might imagine. Xiang Yin and her sister left to refine the precious blood. Ding Beifeng shook his head and sighed. He felt that it would be difficult for them to see each other again. Even if one of the sisters was lucky enough to succeed, the other would be separated by life and death. The next day, Lu Yi set out alone towards the 10,000 Elephant Sea. Using the Soul Race's ancestral land as a transit point, he smoothly entered Blue Moon Galaxy and arrived at Myriad Phenomenon Galaxy through the insect path. In just a month, Lu Ye's figure appeared on the Three-World Island. It had been 3 years since he last came. The last time he came, he was mainly here to purchase large amounts of fire-type treasures, to replenish the fuel for his talent tree. Lu Ye's return was uneventful, and did not attract much attention. The entire Three-World Island was as prosperous as before. After so many years of operation, the Three-World Island's reputation had already spread throughout the Wanxiang Sea. It was one of the few prosperous commercial spiritual islands on the Wanxiang Sea. The first batch of cultivators who rented shops here had already made a lot of money, especially the branch of the Rainbow Chamber of Commerce. The profits they made on the Three-World Island had already surpassed the main branch of the Rainbow Chamber of Commerce. The last time Lu Yi came back, he came and went in a hurry. Because he was in a hurry to return to the 9 provinces to sort out the core, he did not feel much about it. However, it was clearly different this time. The development of the Three-World Island was secondary. The key was that the overall strength of the Three-World Island's cultivators had clearly improved greatly. Currently, there were more than 10 Yu Yao cultivators on the Three-World Island. With abundant cultivation resources and an excellent cultivation environment, coupled with the accumulation of time, a cultivator's cultivation base would naturally grow. The newly promoted Yu Yao all came from the Jade Conch world. It was not that the cultivators of the Green Li Dao world were not talented. It was because there was a problem with the Green Li Dao world itself. Therefore, the cultivators of the Green Li Dao world could not break through the shackles of the constellations and become Yu Yao. Tang Jun had long discovered this problem. Now, if there were any good seedlings in the Green Li Dao world, they would be sent to the Jade Conch world to cultivate. With this method, they could break through the shackles of the world. In the future, the cultivators of the Jade Conch world would be qualified to become Yu Yao. As for why no one in the 9 provinces could become Yu Yao, it was because it had not been long. When Lu Yi brought them to the 10,000 Elephant Sea, the cultivators of the 9 provinces were all in the early stage of constellation. Now there were no longer any early-stage constellation cultivators in the Three-World Island. They were either in the middle stage or the late stage. Lu Yi was gratified by the development of the island. He could foresee that as time passed, the foundation of the island would become stronger and stronger. Although it had been many years since the battle that destroyed the Bayou, the aftermath of that battle still lingered. In addition, the Three-World Island now had the support of the Che-Ling world. Therefore, in recent years, no one dared to cause trouble for the Three-World Island. Occasionally, there were cultivators who dared to cause trouble on the island, but they were all taught a lesson by the patrolling cultivators. The first thing Lu Yi did when he returned to the Three-World Island was to look for Shui Yuan. He asked her to blow the Azure Sea Snail and go to the Mermaid Clan's territory. Wuxia had not been unsealed. Lu Yi did not know how long this state would last. However, he could clearly see that Huaxi's cultivation was increasing rapidly. Because the isolation power of the amber that sealed Huaxi was too strong, Lu Yi could not sense it clearly. However, he suspected that Huaxi had already become Yu Yao. This was because he could vaguely sense traces of mana waves on Huaxi's body. This made him click his tongue in wonder. It was undeniable that this was an opportunity that belonged to Wuxia. If this situation continued to develop, it was not impossible for the sealed Wuxia to become Rizhao. This made Lu Yi vaguely think that perhaps Wuxia had been sealed passively in the beginning. However, now she should have the ability to break the seal. It was just that this opportunity was rare, so she deliberately maintained this state. Otherwise, there was no way to explain why the seal had been maintained until now. Moreover, during this period of time, Huaxi's cultivation was still increasing rapidly. After returning from the mermaid clan's territory, Lu Yi spoke with Shui Yuan for a while. After learning about the recent situation in the 9 prefectures, Shui Yuan was both shocked and delighted. Mount Fengsuan was famous. A few years ago, Mount Fengsuan had just passed by the 10,000 Elephant Sea from the west. She still remembered the power of several Rizhao when they appeared together. She also knew that Lu Yi was related to Mount Fengsuan. Currently, there was a group of people from the human clan residing in the Three-World Island. However, she never expected that Lu Yi would become the master of Mount Fengsuan. Moreover, the east had already merged with the core and stopped outside the 9 prefectures. The south and west were also on the way to merge. Back then, when they were surrounded and intercepted by enemies at the Spirit Stream battlefield, she and Li Baxian had to go and save the little junior brother. Now with a shake of his body, he actually had such great achievements. Looking back on the past, Shui Yuan could not help but sigh. She increasingly felt that the sect master had a good eye for people. The greatest blessing of their sect was to accept Lu Yi into their sect. With the development of the Three-World Island, the pressure on Shui Yuan's shoulders had lessened by quite a bit. In the past, she had to use the pill gourd to refine pills every day. However, now she did not need to be so busy. Not to mention that the main source of income for the Three-World Island was not from the sale of pills. The arrival of the Hua clan had also relieved a large part of the pressure on the pill room. As a result, Shui Yuan had enough time to cultivate. However, she was still refining pills because her family needed them, especially the soul refining pill. Whether it was the great elder of the mermaid clan Yin Miao or Luan Xiaoa, after persisting in refining the soul refining pill for these past few years, they had already vaguely touched the threshold of Rizhao. Perhaps one day, the two of them would become the first Rizhao of their respective forces. This would be a huge breakthrough for both the Jade Conch boundary and the mermaid clan. After leaving the pill room, Lu Yi went to the talisman shop of the dwarf clan. He found Haitang and handed over the storage ring that Su Yuqing had given him to her. Haitang was greatly surprised. She did not know how Lu Yi had a direct contact with her master again. When she learned that Lu Yi had actually found the core and brought it back, and that the eastern region had already merged with the core, she was even more shocked. Soon, the 3 tribes of the dwarf clan heard the news and came to inquire about Fengsuan Mountain with Lu Yi. Lu Yi didn't hide anything and told them that it wouldn't take many years for the 3 tribes to be unified again. After being stunned, the group of human cultivators couldn't help but rejoice. Not long after, a 30% discount notice was posted in front of the talisman shop, causing a surge of people outside the talisman shop that was already popular. Lu Yi took the opportunity to slip away. When he returned to his residence, he found that Luan Xiaoa was already waiting there. "Senior sister, is something the matter?" Lu Yi asked after inviting her to take a seat and serving her tea. "Take a look at this." Luan Xiaoa handed over a jade slip. Lu Yi took it and examined it. After a while he frowned. There were dozens of names recorded in the jade slip, and each name was followed by a note of time. Among these dozens of people, Lu Yi even saw a few names that were somewhat familiar. These were undoubtedly cultivators from the 9 provinces, which was why they looked familiar. And without exception, these people had all died. On the 10,000 Elephant Sea, including the entire 10,000 Elephant Galaxy, except for the nearby regions of the star system, it could be said that there were battles everywhere. It was common for cultivators to die here. The cultivators of the 3 realms had been in the 10,000 Elephant Sea for many years. After so many years, the ratio of dozens of people dying was not high. Moreover, these kinds of deaths were basically unsolved cases. There was no way to investigate in detail, and nothing could be found. Perhaps they met other cultivators face to face, and got into a conflict, because they did not like each other, and were killed. Lu Yi even saw a newly promoted Yu Yao on the list. This cultivator called Wei Po was undoubtedly from the Jade Conch realm. End of chapter. Chapter 1841. After conquering Baiyue, the cultivators of the Three Realms had gained a foothold on the Three Realms Island. If the cultivators had stayed on the island, nothing would have happened. However, as a cultivator, there were always some reasons to leave the island. It was normal for them to encounter a battle on the chaotic 10,000 manifestations sea and die. The Three Realms Island was not the only one to face such a problem. Any force that came to the 10,000 manifestations sea would encounter a similar situation. Therefore, although there were only a few dozen people on the list, it was still acceptable for all the cultivators on the Three Realms Island. What made Lu Yi feel strange was the newly promoted Yu Yao called Wei Po. Looking at the time next to his name, Wei Po had met with an accident a year ago. However, his name was different from the others. Everyone else's names were blood red, but Wei Po's was blue. What's going on? Lu Yi asked. Yuan Xiao said. Other than Wei Po, everyone else on the list has died. Only Wei Po is still alive, and he's in the 10,000 manifestations sea. Where? Lu Yi asked. I'm not sure. Yuan Xiao shook her head. We suspect that Wei Po has been captured alive and imprisoned on a spiritual island in the 10,000 manifestations sea. Junior brother Wei Po's sound talisman can still be contacted, but no one responded to the message. Lu Yi couldn't help but frown. Although Wei Po was a newly promoted Yu Yao, he was still a Yu Yao. On the 10,000 manifestations sea, under the premise that Rizhao wouldn't make a move, the only person who could capture him alive must be Yu Yao. Moreover, the other party's strength was far above Wei Po's, otherwise, it would be impossible for them to do this. Therefore, the person who captured Wei Po was most likely a late-stage Yu Yao. The other party had captured Wei Po but didn't kill him. This was very thought-provoking. Judging from the current situation, the person who had secretly attacked didn't seem to want to take Wei Po's life. Otherwise, Wei Po wouldn't have been able to survive for a year. Do you have any suspects? Lu Yi asked. Yuan Xiao nodded. The 10,000 manifestations island. Lu Yi was stunned. It can't be right. The 10,000 manifestations island was a signboard. It was a top-grade spiritual island in the local star system, and had never participated in the conflicts between the various forces. This was because the local star system had several sunshine protectors on the island. 10,000 manifestations island. So no matter what kind of storms on the 10,000 manifestations sea, they remained unmoved. But from another point of view, if the island of versatility were to make a move, Wei Po wouldn't be able to stop it. Yuan Du. Lu Yan seemed to understand. Thousand Islands Sunshine Island. And Yuhuan Island Yuhuan. Was Islands Yuhuan. Was of the 100,000 Islands Island Master was Islands Yu was 1,000 Island. I also guessed that it was him. Lu Yi found it hard to believe. He's Sunshine. Why would he bother Three World Island over such a small matter? Yuan Xiao sighed. You underestimate the impact of that incident on Yuan Du. What do you mean? Lu Yi asked. Yuan Xiao explained. Originally, there were only 3 Sunshine Guardians in the Wanxiang Sea. However, ever since a powerful cultivator arrived that year and killed one of them and successfully escaped, the number of Sunshine Guardians in the local star system increased to 5. Yuan Du was one of them. He had just arrived and was in urgent need of a spiritual island to submit to him. Baiyue was the first to submit to him. After we defeated Baiyue and killed Baiyue and Yueyao, Yuhuan escaped. Yuan Du was even willing to step in personally to protect his life. He was not only protecting Yuhuan's life, but also his own prestige. In the end. But Lu Ye's words forced Yuan Du to kill Yuhuan in front of everyone. In this way, Yuan Du seemed to have maintained the rules of fairness, but it was a fatal blow to his prestige. This was because everyone knew what had happened. Baiwa joined him, but Baiwa was conquered. Even the island master was killed by him. Once this was out, who would dare to visit him? Even if they were interested, they would change their minds. In this way, in the entire 10,000 manifestations sea, other than the few spiritual islands that Yuan Du had visited in the beginning, he had no other gains after so many years. This directly caused the cultivators from the Yuan realm to not be able to obtain enough places to cultivate in the 10,000 manifestations sea. After listening to Luan Xiao's explanation, Lu Yi understood that the incident that year had a huge impact on Yuan Du's prestige. It was normal for him to hate the Three Worlds Island. If it were not for the rules, he would have done it himself. Although he could not do it openly, he could do some small tricks in the dark. Besides junior brother Wei Pe, we have investigated the other cultivators who died. There are some clues that point to the 10,000 Manifestations Island. Unfortunately, there is no conclusive evidence. If Yuan Du was really behind this, he would not have left any clues. Besides Wei Pe, the list of dead cultivators was full of constellations. In this vast 10,000 Manifestations sea, the death of constellations was a common occurrence. Even if the Three Worlds Island wanted to investigate, they could not find any concrete information. They captured Wei Pe, but did not kill him. What do they want? Lu Yi asked. Wan Xiao shook her head. This was also what she did not understand. If the other party wanted to use Wei Pe to threaten the Three Worlds Island, they were obviously wrong. The Three Worlds Island was a spiritual island shared by all the cultivators of the Three Worlds. Although Wan Xiao was the island master, she could not sacrifice the interests of all the cultivators for Wei Pe. What puzzled Wan Xiao even more was that it had been a year, and the other party had not taken the initiative to contact them. Is old Tang still running around outside? Lu Yi suddenly asked. Wan Xiao smiled. Don't worry about him. He has a top defensive magic treasure. Even if he encounters any enemies, he can hold on for a while as long as the sun does not come out. He has a lot of friends. In this vast 10,000 manifestations sea, he has friends everywhere. As long as they are not stupid, they will not be stupid enough to attack him. Lu Yi nodded and was slightly relieved. Old Tang knew that he was not strong enough, so he put in a lot of effort to protect his life. When he was surrounded by Yu Yao of Baiwei, he also held on until Lu Yi came to his rescue. Now Old Tang's defensive magic treasures were even stronger than before. After all, he did not lack money. At this moment, Wan Xiao suddenly turned her head and looked in a direction. He's here. Lu Yi also sensed Tang Jun's aura. Looking at the direction he was moving in, he was coming here. After a few breaths, Tang Jun rushed into the bamboo house with a ruddy face. He glanced at Lu Yi in surprise. You're really back? Lu Yi had been back for a few days. However, he went straight to the mermaid territory after returning, so he did not show his face on the island, nor did he contact Old Tang. Where did you come from? Wan Xiao frowned, mainly because Old Tang reeked of alcohol. Socializing. Tang Jun explained casually. He turned to look at Lu Yi, then took out a storage ring and handed it to Lu Yi. Someone asked me to give this to you. Lu Yi took it puzzled. Who? I don't know. Tang Jun shook his head. But that guy's demonic qi is very strong. It seems he's a monster. Actually, he didn't know that Lu Yi had already returned, because he hadn't been on the Three-World Island for a while. But today he had been stopped by the Yao. After asking about Lu Yi's identity, the Yao tossed the storage ring to him, and told him to give it to Lu Yi. After hearing Tang Jun's explanation, Lu Yi fiddled with the storage ring in his hand. Using his divine sense, he found that there were no restrictions on the storage ring, so it could be opened easily. Be careful, Wan Xiao reminded. No one knew what was inside the storage ring. If there was something vicious inside, it would be inappropriate to take it out rashly. Lu Yi nodded. It's fine. Using his divine sense, he already knew what was inside. He immediately took it out. A fragrant pouch and a jade slip. This is... Wan Xiao's eyes immediately focused on the fragrant pouch. Lu Yi was curious about the fragrant pouch's name, but he looked up at Wan Xiao and asked, Senior sister, have you seen this before? Let me see. Luan Xiao reached out and picked up the fragrant pouch. After examining it carefully for a while, her face darkened. That's right. This belongs to junior brother Wei Pe. I saw him carrying it with him all the time. It was a parting gift from a girl he liked in his early years. Wei Pe's item. Lu Yi raised his eyebrows. This matter was interesting. He was just talking to Luan Xiao about Wei Pe's matter, and was still guessing who had killed Wei Pe. He never thought that in the blink of an eye, Tang Jun would actually bring back Wei Pe's sachet. Needless to say, the monster that gave the storage ring to Tang Jun was the one who did it. Luan Xiao realized this and quickly asked, Senior brother Tang, what is the background of that monster? Tang Jun shook his head. I don't know. He left after giving me the item. He did not tell me his background, so I did not think of tracking him down. He changed the topic and said, however, he is a monster. It is not impossible to investigate him. There are not many spiritual islands on the 10,000 Elephant Sea with monster cultivators. There is no need to investigate, Lu Yi suddenly said. Both of them looked at him. Lu Yi passed the jade slip in his hand to Luan Xiao. Take a look. He has already stated his background. Luan Xiao took a look and was in disbelief. Purple Jade Island. How could it be Purple Jade Island? There was no other information in the jade slip except for the 3 words, Purple Jade Island. Based on her previous deduction, it should be Yuan Du from the 10,000 Elephant Island, who secretly targeted the cultivators of the 3-world island. He was not the one who did it, but he must have secretly instructed them. Since that was the case, the few spiritual islands that sided with Yuan Du were all suspects. She did not think of Purple Jade Island. This was because Purple Jade Island was famous in the entire 10,000 Elephant Sea. Behind Purple Jade Island was the Purple Jade Demon Star, which was a top realm. Generally speaking, spiritual islands that were occupied by top realms did not need to be worshipped. This was because they were confident enough to stand on the 10,000 Elephant Sea. No matter how the other spiritual islands changed their ownership, no one would pay attention to them. If Yuan Du held a grudge against the 3-world island because of what happened in the past, it was understandable. However, why would Purple Jade Island do this? This did not make sense at all. Chapter 1842. Across the starry sky, the Monster Clan was a well-deserved big clan. Almost every corner of the starry sky had Monster Clan members active. Although they were not as numerous as the human clan, they were much larger than other clans. But basically, the demon race lived together with other races in various domains. Only the Zixuan Demon Star was a paradise for the demon race. The entire domain was inhabited by the demon race, and there was no other race. The Zixuan Demon Star was also a holy land in the hearts of all the demon race. It was the only top domain that the demon race occupied. Such a powerful force was naturally qualified to occupy a top-level spiritual island on the Vientiane Sea. The Purple Jade Island had existed for tens of thousands of years so far. In the entire Vientiane Sea, it was one of the top forces. Although the 3-world island was now famous, and had the record of capturing a top-level spiritual island, there was still a gap between them and the Purple Jade Island. Now the situation was obvious. Wei Pe was captured alive by the Purple Jade Island, and was now imprisoned on the Purple Jade Island. However, Luan Xiao could not understand why the Purple Jade Island was targeting the 3-world island when there was no enmity between them. I heard a rumor before, but I didn't take it seriously at the time. But now it seems that it may be true. Tang Jun showed a thoughtful look. What rumor? Lu Yi asked. Tang Jun said, that old man Yuan Du doesn't have any other hobbies except for women. It is said that he has a harem of 300 beauties. Among the few concubines he dotes on the most, one of them is a monster. Old Tang had been running around the Vientiane Sea all these years, and had made a lot of friends. When drinking and chatting with people, he naturally talked about all kinds of things. He had heard a lot of miscellaneous news. This was mentioned by a drinking friend when he was chatting, but old Tang just took it as a joke. After all, although Yuan Du was old, he was still a man after all. It was normal for him to be obsessed with women. It is said that the Monster Clan woman's original body is a six-tailed demon fox. She is so beautiful and charming that even Yuan Du was captivated. The key is that the woman's voice is as soft as water, and her body is soft and boneless. Enough! Wan Xiao shouted coldly. Lu Yi, who was listening with great interest, quickly regained his senses. Old Tang couldn't help coughing lightly as he clenched his fist and put it to his mouth. So, I'm afraid Purple Jade Island has been instructed by that old fart Yuan Du. That should be it. Wan Xiao's face darkened. What do we do now? Tang Jun asked. He was good at socializing, but now that Wei Po was locked up on Purple Jade Island, he had no idea how to save him. It was one thing if he didn't know Wei Po's whereabouts, but now that he knew, he definitely couldn't sit by and do nothing. The other party had deliberately sent Wei Po a sachet, obviously with the intention of provoking him. The Great Purple Jade Island indeed had the qualifications to do so. They're coming for me, Lu Yi suddenly said. How so? Tang Jun was stunned. Wan Xiao reacted. Yes, they're coming for you. Tang Jun looked at Lu Yi, and then at Wan Xiao. After thinking for a while he suddenly understood. He was old and shrewd, but he didn't realize it for a while. After thinking it through he finally reacted. Wei Po had an accident a year ago, and had been imprisoned on Purple Jade Island for such a long time. Wan Xiao could only judge that he was still alive, and on the Wanxiang see through the reaction of the sound talisman. Because if Wei Po was dead, the sound talisman would not respond if he was too far away. Purple Jade Island didn't take any action for a year, but after Lu Yi returned, he sent someone to find Tang Jun and asked him to bring the storage ring to Lu Yi. If this wasn't for him, then what was it? After Lu Yi returned, he immediately went to the mermaid's territory. After returning, he went to the spirit talisman shop of the imps. It was at that time that the cultivators who were secretly spying on him discovered his tracks, which led to the subsequent events. I'll go. Lu Yi got up. No. Wan Xiao and Tang Jun hurriedly stopped him. Wan Xiao said, the other party is hostile to us. If you go rashly it's definitely not safe. Purple Jade Island is not Baiyue. Of course I know, but Wei Po is in their hands. We can't just ignore it. I'll go. Wan Xiao clenched her teeth. She looked at Lu Yi seriously and said, in terms of cultivation, although I am higher than you, you are the one who raised the Three-World Island. The Three-World Island can do without me, but it can't do without you. Lu Yi shook his head and said, they're targeting me. Senior sister, it's useless for you to go. Do you believe that if you go, they'll just have another hostage for no reason? Wan Xiao was speechless. Tang Jun said, this matter needs to be considered at length. Lu Yi shook his head and said, if I don't go, they'll definitely use fellow Taoist Wei Po's life to make an issue out of it. When that time comes, Three-World Island will definitely bear the infamy of not helping when someone is in danger. So I have to go even if I don't want to. This won't do, that won't do. This Purple Jade Island's methods are too despicable. Tang Jun was indignant. They made the first move, so they naturally have the upper hand. Lu Yi comforted. Don't worry, I have a countermeasure. I won't seek my own death. How confident are you? Wan Xiao asked. 100%. Lu Yi smiled confidently. Don't lie to me. Wan Xiao looked at him seriously. I also hope to save junior brother Wei Po, but I can't risk your safety because of him, even if there's the slightest risk. Don't worry, senior sister. I cherish my own life more than anyone else. Don't tell me you've forgotten that I have a doppelganger technique. Wan Xiao was startled and revealed an embarrassed expression. I've really lost my mind. I actually forgot about this. Tang Jun couldn't help but relax. You should have said so earlier. Lu Yi thought for a moment and said, Senior sister, do me a favor and find a magic weapon similar to my saber. Wan Xiao immediately nodded. That's easy. She flashed and left. Tang Jun asked, what do I need to do? Tell me about the situation on Purple Jade Island. He didn't pay much attention to Purple Jade Island, so he wasn't clear about the overall situation of Purple Jade Island. Old Tang was undoubtedly more knowledgeable in this aspect. Old Tang immediately began to explain, and Lu Yi listened while flicking a drop of precious blood to transform into a doppelganger. Then, he took off his clothes and put them on the doppelganger. Not long after, Wuxia returned with a magic weapon that didn't look any different from the mountain pan saber. There were two Luyes here, and she couldn't tell which one was real and which one was fake with her eyesight. Even though she had experienced this before, she was still surprised. The doppelganger put on the long saber magic weapon. Everything was ready and he flew over. He purposely didn't conceal himself and flew over the Three World Islands commercial area. His appearance was quite imposing, and he attracted the attention of countless cultivators. This was because foreign cultivators were generally not allowed to fly on the Three World Island. Otherwise, it would be seen as a provocation to the Three World Island. Over the years, there were occasionally those who didn't abide by the rules, and they were all taught a lesson. Thus, Luya's actions were undoubtedly very conspicuous. However, after sensing the magic power fluctuations of Yu Yao on Luya's body, the cultivators knew that he was most likely one of the Three World Islands' island masters, and no longer paid him any attention. Only a cultivator standing at the side of the street stared at Luya's figure for a while, then took out a sound talisman to send a message. Then, the cultivator hurriedly flew away, quickly leaving the Three World Island and heading in a certain direction. However, just as he left the Three World Island, he sensed an aura rapidly approaching from behind. The cultivator instinctively turned around to look, and he was immediately shocked. It was a woman, and he was no stranger to her. She was the Three World Islands island master, Wuxia. She came with great momentum, and it was obvious that she didn't come with good intentions. He had been exposed. The cultivator was greatly alarmed, and he immediately took out a sound talisman to send a message. However, since he had already been targeted by Wuxia, there were some things he couldn't do, especially under the premise that there was a huge gap between their cultivations. The might of a late-stage Yu Yao suddenly descended, and the cultivator's body stiffened, almost falling into the 10,000 elephant sea. Fortunately, Wuxia arrived in time and caught him. Then, she took out a pouch-like magic treasure and wrapped it around his head, directly capturing him. After confirming that there were no cultivators nearby, and that no one had seen what had just happened, Wuxia turned around and returned to the Three World Island. She was extremely impressed by Luya's judgment. This was because just now, Luyi had asked her and Tang Jun to investigate the abnormalities in the Three World Island. They wanted to see if there were any cultivators who had sent a message after he left. If there were, then it was very likely that they were spies that the Violet Jade Island had planted here. The cultivator in front of them was one of them, because Wuxia had already sensed the unique aura of the Yao clan from him. It was a kind of barbaric aura. Letting him leave was only a delaying tactic, because Wuxia wanted to capture him alive in a place where there was no one around. Otherwise, if she took action on the Three World Island, news would quickly spread. Right now, she did not know if this was the only one, but the Yu Yao of the Three World Island had all been mobilized. Luya's main body was overseeing the Three World Island, so any spies from the Violet Jade Island would not be able to escape their detection. On the other side, on the Violet Jade Island, a burly man with a bare chest and a head of fluffy hair suddenly opened his dark yellow eyes. He licked his lips and revealed a bloodthirsty smile. They're finally here. His divine sense surged, and the quiet Violet Jade Island quickly became noisy. Half a day later, Luyi flew to the Violet Jade Island by following the star map. From afar, the Violet Jade Island was very large. Although it was not as large as the Three World Island, it was undoubtedly much larger than the Baiwa Island. Large size meant that there were many cultivators on the island. Moreover, it was worthy of being a top-grade spirit island that had occupied the island for tens of thousands of years. The light screen of the Spirit Island's protective formation was brighter than most of the Spirit Islands that Luyi had seen before. This undoubtedly showed that the protective formation's defensive power was very strong. Moreover, this was only under normal conditions. If it was fully activated, who knew how much stronger it would be? If the Baiwa Island had a protective formation of this level back then, with the overall strength of the Three World Islands cultivators, They would not be able to break it at all. Naturally, there would be no follow-up. It could be said that such a protective formation was enough to dispel the covetous thoughts of any force, unless they broke through from the inside. End of chapter. Chapter 1843. With such a strong defensive formation, it would not be easy for someone to break through it from the inside. Back when Lu Yi attacked Baiyue, he disguised himself as Baiyue Yu Yao and broke a few of Baiyue's formation bases. Even so, Baiyue's defensive formation was still working. It was just that its defensive strength had decreased. Baiyue was only a high-class spirit island, and its size was not even comparable to Zixian's. It had 8 array foundations, and Zixian's side definitely had more. It was basically impossible to break through the protective array by destroying all the array foundations in a short period of time. Based on the rules of the Wanxiang Sea, such a spiritual island's defense could be said to be impregnable. No force could break through it. This was because once a battle for the spiritual island broke out, only 5 Yu Yao would be able to fight. 5 Yu Yao would not be enough to break through such a defensive formation. Compared to the top-class spiritual islands occupied by these top forces, the three-world island still had a long way to go. Collecting his thoughts, Lu Yi flew forward in a flash. Soon, he arrived outside Purple Jade Island's formation. He activated his dermic powers and said loudly, "Lu Yi of the three-world island is here to visit." As soon as he finished speaking, a crack appeared in the protective array, and a figure flashed out from within. Lu Yi looked over and saw that the newcomer was a young man with a pale face and no beard. He was dressed in a snow-white fur coat and had wrapped himself up tightly. If someone who didn't know the situation saw him, they would probably think that this was some kind of frigid place. The young man didn't give off the feeling of masculinity that a man should have. Instead, he gave off a strange sense of femininity. He looked at Lu Yi up and down with a smile. "Are you Lu Yi from the three-world island?" From his tone, it was obvious that he had heard of Lu Yi. Lu Yi nodded. "That's right. How should I address you?" He recalled the information that old Tang had told him about Purple Jade Island. He had some guesses about this feminine man's identity. Purple Jade Island was indeed a top-class spiritual island. However, there were only 5 Yu Yao guardians registered. This was the rule of the Wanxiang Sea. No one could break it. However, this did not mean that there were only 5 Yu Yao on Purple Jade Island. Just like the three-world island, the unregistered Yu Yao did not have a name. Although they could stay on the spiritual island to cultivate, they could not participate in the battle for the spiritual island. This feminine man was at the late stage of the Yu Yao realm. Since he had appeared to welcome him, he must be one of the 5 Yu Yao guardians. As expected, the other party opened his mouth and said, "Zixian Hu Guang." Hu Guang was from the same clan as Yuan Du's concubine. Both of them were 6-tailed fox demons. "You're a guest, please come in." Hu Guang leaned to the side and gestured with a smile. However, in the next moment, he frowned because Lu Yi did not hesitate in the slightest in the face of his invitation. He only said, "Sorry to bother you," and then rushed into the crack in the formation, directly entering Purple Jade Island. Hu Guang was stunned in place. He really couldn't understand where Lu Yi got the courage to enter Zixian alone. This was completely different from what they had expected. In their opinion, as long as Lu Yi was sane, it would be impossible for him to enter Purple Jade Island. He would only communicate with them outside the protective array. But he had come in just like that. They wondered if he was really bold or crazy. Interesting. Hu Guang blinked his eyes and followed in a flash. Inside Purple Jade Island, Hu Guang led Lu Yi in a certain direction. The former did not speak, and the latter did not speak. Lu Ye's divine sense swept around, and could clearly sense the auras of many cultivators on the island. From time to time, he could even hear 1 or 2 strange beast roars. Unfortunately, he could not detect Wei Po's aura, nor did he know where Wei Po was being held. Not long after, Hu Guang led Lu Yi to a cliff suspended in the air. This place was close to the sea, and unknown spirit trees were planted on both sides of the road. Flowers bloomed one after another, and the fragrance of the flowers filled the air. There was also a large platform, on which a long table and prayer mats were placed. It seemed to be a banquet hall for guests. At this moment, many beautiful monster race women were already waiting here. On the long table, there were some exquisite fruit plates and several jars of fine wine. Lu Yi frowned slightly, not knowing what was going on. "A guest has arrived, greet him," Hu Guang ordered. Immediately, a graceful monster race woman walked forward, as charming as water, grabbed Lu Ye's arm with a smile and said softly, "Honored guest, this way please." Lu Yi did not move and just turned his head to look at Hu Guang. "Fellow Taoist, what is the meaning of this?" He'd come for Wei Pe this time. And speaking of which, he'd actually been invited by Wei Pe. He'd originally thought that even if they didn't fight, they would at least engage in a battle of words. In the end, such a situation had occurred, and it more or less caused him to be unable to make heads or tails of it. Hu Guang smiled slightly. "Fellow Taoist has come at the right time. This island just so happens to be hosting a banquet to thank fellow Taoists for taking care of this island over the years. Since fellow Taoist has come, you are a guest, so please take a seat first." Lu Yi blinked, then nodded and said, "All right." Led by the monster race woman, Lu Yi quickly came to a table on the left and sat down cross-legged. The monster race woman immediately knelt beside Lu Yi and poured him a cup of wine. "Fellow Taoist, please take a seat. I have to go greet the guests, so please excuse me," Hu Guang said and turned to leave. On such a large cliff platform, except for the monster race maids waiting here, Lu Yi was the only one left. He vaguely knew Purple Jade Island's plan. What was certain was that Purple Jade Island was indeed related to Yuan Du, and the capture of Wei Pu a year ago must have been secretly instructed by Yuan Du. It was just that at that time, Lu Yi was not in the 10,000 Elephant Sea, so Purple Jade Island did not make a move. It was not until recently that he appeared on the Three-World Island that Purple Jade Island deliberately sent Wei Pu's sachet to lure him here. Just as Lu Yi had said to Luan Xiao before, Wei Pu was in their hands, and they specifically sent the jade slip and sachet to him. With such an advantage, he had to come here even if he did not want to, unless he did not care about Wei Pu's life or death, which was obviously impossible. But after he arrived, he happened to see Purple Jade Island inviting guests from all over the world. This was obviously not a coincidence, because the seat Purple Jade Island arranged for him was at the head of the table. Above him was a huge seat, which was obviously the seat of the host. Therefore, he was the main character of this banquet, which was why he did not see any other guests. Back then, he had humiliated Yuan Du in front of everyone. Now it was obvious that they wanted to do the same to him and humiliate him in public. The guests who were about to arrive were just there to accompany them. They wanted to witness how Purple Jade Island humiliated Lu Yi. After this, the news would definitely spread everywhere, and Yuan Du would be able to vent his anger. But even if he knew this would happen, Lu Yi did not have any good ideas at the moment, so he could only wait quietly. The monster race maid next to him was very attentive in serving him. Seeing that Lu Yi did not drink the wine in his cup, she raised her slender fingers, picked up a berry, carefully peeled the skin, and placed it on the fruit plate in front of Lu Yi. Rough music sounded again, and 2 rows of dozens of thin and fat monster race women suddenly entered the hall, dancing coquettishly and wildly. Time passed, and guests continued to arrive. Without exception, all of them were at the late stage of Yuyao. Lu Yi estimated that these guests were the island masters of the major spiritual islands. Since Purple Jade Island wanted to put on a show with him, the cultivators invited to witness must be of high status. When the time came, these island masters would spread the news of the banquet, which would be persuasive and spread faster. Many of the guests were acquaintances, but Lu Yi did not know any of them. In terms of strength, he was much stronger than Tang Jun, but in terms of communication skills, it was not his strong suit. These island masters were a little surprised to see Lu Yi being arranged at the head of the table. Some of them took the initiative to greet him, but when they learned that Lu Yi was the 3rd island master of the Three-World Island, their expressions became a little strange, as if they had vaguely understood something. They stopped talking to him, and Lu Yi was left alone. In the end, Lu Yi saw an acquaintance. Bayan of the Five-Color Island. Upon seeing Lu Yi, Tao Wu ignored the demon clan woman's guidance and directly sat down beside Lu Yi. He laughed and said, "Fellow Taoist Lu, you're really elusive. Where have you been all these years?" He had come to the Three-World Island to look for Lu Yi many times, but he was told that Lu Yi had not returned. He did not expect to meet him here today. "I've been running around," Lu Yi replied with a smile. At the same time, Bai An's voice transmission sounded in his ears. "Why are you here on Purple Jade Island? Leave quickly. The relationship between Purple Jade Island and Yuan-Du is not ordinary." Lu Yi's smile did not fade, and he replied at the same time, "Thank you, fellow Taoist. I know what I'm doing." "What do you mean?" "Listen to me. Leave quickly," Bai An urged with his divine sense while smiling. "The Three-World Island has developed so well, and the branch has been taken good care of there. I have to thank fellow Taoist Lu." "Fellow Taoist, you're too kind. If it weren't for the help of the Five-Color Island back then, the Three-World Island would not be today." Lu Yi replied, "Today's banquet is prepared for me. Someone from our island has fallen into the hands of Purple Jade Island. It's fine for me to sit here, but if anything happens, Purple Jade Island will definitely not allow it." Bai An scratched his head and cursed. "I was wondering why Purple Jade Island suddenly sent me an invitation to come over for a chat. It turns out that there's such a thing. Come with me, I'll take you out of here. If anyone from Purple Jade Island dares to jump out, I'll help you stop them." Lu Yi's heart warmed, and he said truthfully, "Fellow Taoist, I'm here with a clone. Don't worry too much." Bai An was stunned and looked Lu Yi up and down for a while. Really? He couldn't see any flaws at all. The main reason was that this clone was too intelligent. Lu Yi smiled. "Do I look like the kind of person who will take the initiative to court death? Since I dared to come, I naturally came prepared." Only then did Tua relax. Chapter 1844. Fellow Taoist, no matter what happens later, you don't have to interfere. Just wait and see, Lu Yi said. Bai An had a fiery temper. Although he wasn't afraid of Purple Jade Island, due to his background, Lu Yi didn't want him to get into trouble because of him. He had saved Bai An's life in the past. After learning about the Three-World Island's predicament, Bai An immediately decided to move the Rainbow Chamber of Commerce's branch to the Three-World Island to help them out. Just now, he even wanted to help Lu Yi out of the encirclement. It was clear that Bai An was a righteous person. Bai An nodded. "I understand." He turned his head and glared fiercely at the Yao clan mate beside him. "Hurry up and pour me some wine. Can't you see that I'm having a good time talking with my brother?" Her saliva almost sprayed onto the other party's face. The monster race mate's beautiful face paled. She quickly poured more wine. Guests arrived one after another. Gradually, the tables were filled with Yu Yao cultivators from the various major spirit islands. However, Lu Yi had only seen Hu Guang among the Yu Yao cultivators from Purple Jade Island. He hadn't seen anyone else. Aside from the Yao clan maids, all the cultivators present were at the late Yu Yao stage. Lu Yi was the only one at the middle Yu Yao stage, which made him stand out. Across from Lu Yi, several tables were empty. He guessed that they were reserved for the Yu Yao cultivators of the main island. As for the huge seat at the top to his left, it should be the seat of the first island master of Purple Jade Island. Another guest arrived. Hu Guang personally led the way. Lu Yi turned around and saw a face that he had seen before. The other party was walking side by side with Hu Guang, chatting and laughing. He seemed to be in a good mood. When he arrived, he happened to look at Lu Yi. Their eyes met. Lu Yi narrowed his eyes slightly, but the other party was full of smiles. He walked over and stood in front of Lu Yi. "Isn't this fellow Taoist Lu from the Three-World Island? It's been a long time." This person's cultivation wasn't high. He was only at the early Yu Yao stage. However, no cultivator present could ignore his identity. Yuancheng. He had the same surname as Yuan-Du, and worked for Yuan-Du therefore. Many people guessed that Yuancheng was Yuan-Du's descendant. However, no one knew if that was the case. The only thing that couldn't be denied was that Yuancheng was Yuan-Du's spokesperson. He was also Yuan-Du's representative. To the Yu Yang, There were many things that was inconvenient for Yuan Du to deal with. For example, it was Yuan Cheng who took care of those spirit islands. To Lu Yi. Lu Yi. That Lu. To Lu. To Lu. To Lu Yi to be. Lu. To. Back then, this Yuan Cheng had only been a star constellation cultivator. Now he had already advanced to Yu Yao. However, judging from his transcendence energy fluctuations, he should have advanced not too long ago. Lu Yi. Lu Yi didn't even raise his head. He just lowered his head and drank. The Yao clan maid next to him picked up a berry and handed it to Lu Yi. Yuan Cheng's face twitched slightly. He immediately regretted going to Lu Yi to show off in front of him. Being ignored in public was a loss of face. He gritted his teeth and said, "Fellow Taoists' ears don't seem to be very sharp?" Lu Yi ignored him. Bayan splashed the wine in his cup forward and glared. "Where did you come from? What are you blabbering on about? Get lost." Yuan Cheng didn't expect that Ding Dang would suddenly attack, and his face turned green and red after being drenched by a cup of wine. Thinking about how Yuan Du stood behind him, who wouldn't give him some face on the 10,000 Elephant Sea. If it were another Yu Yao who dared to humiliate him like this, he wouldn't let it go. However, Bayan was from the five-color domain. He wasn't afraid of Yuan Du, not to mention, he didn't attack Yuan Cheng. Yuan Du certainly wouldn't blame him for such a small matter. Embarrassed and annoyed, Hu Guang stepped forward. "Fellow Taoist Bayan, please don't shout so loudly. It's quite scary. Fellow Taoist Yuan, this way please." Fellow Taoist, Bayan must be a little drunk from drinking too much wine. This who apologizes for not treating you well. Saying so, he pulled Yuan Cheng to the side. Yuan Cheng also knew it wasn't good to make a scene. With a livid face, he took advantage of the situation and sat opposite Lu Yi, which was the first seat on the right. He couldn't stare at Bayan. His strength was inferior, and Bayan wasn't afraid of him. He could only accept his bad luck and comfort himself that he was bitten by a mad dog. He glared fiercely at Lu Yi, as if he wanted to eat him alive. On the opposite side, when Lu Yi saw the seats that Purple Jade Island had arranged for Yuan Cheng, he knew that the show was about to begin. He and Yuan Cheng were sitting at the top left and right respectively. This was obviously a deliberate arrangement by Purple Jade Island. In this show, he was the protagonist, and Yuan Cheng was here to watch the show on behalf of Yuan Du. After Yuan Cheng sat down, the rough music around them suddenly became louder, and with the sound of the music several powerful auras quickly approached from afar. Sensing these auras, all the guests stood up one after another. Lu Yi and Bayan were the only ones who remained seated. Monster Chi surged as a figure flashed past. In front of the huge chair at the very top, a burly figure suddenly appeared. Lu Yi looked up and saw that this figure was more than 10 meters tall, with a bare chest. His skin was a strange copper color, and his hair was puffy and puffy. His expression was dignified, like a lion that had just woken up. Purple Jade Island's first island master, Lionheart. Lu Yi recognized the other party at a glance, because Tang Jun had mentioned this person when he explained the information about Purple Jade Island to him. It was said that Lionheart had been stuck in the late stage of the Moon Jade realm for 1,000 years. It seemed that because of his greed and cultivation when he was young, he had no hope of seeing the light of day in this life. Although he had no hope of seeing the light of day, because he had been in the Moon Jade realm for so long, his strength could be said to be at the top of the Moon Jade realm. In addition, because he was a monster, his physique was extremely tough, and he could be said to be a human-shaped magic treasure. There was once a cultivator in the late stage of the Moon Jade realm who fought with him, but in less than 20 breaths, he was torn apart alive. It was clear to see just how strong he was. One had to admit that with such a burly figure standing here, the pressure he brought was extremely strong. Along with him were the other Moon Jade Island cultivators of Purple Jade Island, all of whom were standing in front of the reserved seats. Lionheart's dark yellow eyes swept across the crowd, as if he didn't care about Lu Yi and Bayan's lack of manners. He grinned and said, "My humble island is honored by the presence of all the guests. This island master would like to thank all the fellow Taoists for coming." Saying so, he cupped his fists and bowed. The group of moon jade cultivators below politely returned the gesture. Take a seat. This banquet is not for any particular reason. Everyone who came is a friend of Purple Jade Island. Many of you haven't seen each other in a long time, so I invited all of you here just to catch up on old times. Lionheart gestured with his hand and took the lead to sit down on his huge chair. If Lu Yi sat on that chair, people would be able to sit side by side. However, Lionheart sat perfectly on it, which showed just how majestic his physique was. If the two of them were to stand face to face, Lu Yi estimated that he would only be as tall as Lionheart's knee. After the guests and hosts took their seats, the atmosphere became lively. The demon race's dancers sang and danced below, and the Purple Jade Demon Planet's specialty delicacies were constantly being served. The guests chatted loudly, and the atmosphere was very lively. Lu Yi sat in his seat and didn't move, only drinking a few cups with Bai, and Lionheart had no intention of specially greeting him, and neither did the other Moon Jade cultivators. Even when Hu Guang proposed a toast to each of them, he didn't leave Lu Yi behind. However, he could sense the turbulence hidden under this peaceful and lively atmosphere. After 3 rounds of wine and 5 dishes, the atmosphere became even livelier. After a few rounds of toasts, Hu Guang suddenly stood still and said in a clear voice, "Everyone, it's so lively today. Congratulations to so many good friends gathered here. My Purple Jade Island has specially prepared a blood sacrifice for all of you. Today, we won't go home until we're drunk." Some of the guests who were in high spirits immediately became interested. "Oh, may I know what kind of rare spirit beast we're going to sacrifice today?" The cultivator who spoke had attended similar banquets on Purple Jade Island before, so he naturally knew that the blood sacrifice was the highest form of hospitality on the Purple Jade Demon Planet. The last time he was here, Purple Jade Island had prepared an extremely rare spirit beast for the guests to share. It was extremely delicious, and he couldn't forget about it. Thus, when he heard that there would be a blood sacrifice today, he was immediately filled with interest. Even if the other guests hadn't participated in the blood sacrifice before, most of them knew about it. Those who didn't know quickly learned about it from others. Hu Guang smiled slightly. Today's blood sacrifice is extraordinary. I'm sure everyone will be satisfied. As he spoke, he ordered, "Bring it up!" The drumbeats in the surroundings suddenly became more intense. Under the gaze of many cultivators, 4 strong monster race cultivators carried a bamboo bed and flew over. There seemed to be a white thing lying on the bamboo bed. Lu Ye's face suddenly became gloomy. He had been waiting for Purple Jade Island to make trouble, but he didn't expect it to be in such an unexpected way. Raising his eyes, he saw Yuan Qing staring straight at him from the opposite side with a mocking smile on his face. As the bamboo bed approached, many of the expectant guests couldn't help but frown because they found that what was lying on the bamboo bed was not a rare spirit beast at all. It was actually a person. A naked cultivator was tied to a bamboo bed. His vitality was still there. Additionally, he did not appear to have suffered too much. There were no wounds on his body. However, he must have been under some kind of restriction. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for him to not resist at all. The 4 monster race cultivators carried the bamboo bed and landed in front of Lionheart. After bowing respectfully, they retreated. Hu Guang stepped forward. His pale, effeminate face was brimming with excitement as he said, "Everyone, this is today's blood sacrifice. Don't be fooled by his current appearance. This is a Yu Yao, and what's more, he's also a body cultivator. His flesh is firm and should be very chewy." End of chapter. Chapter 1845. Many of the guests frowned when they heard Hu Guang's words. Although the Yu Yao cultivators who were invited to this banquet came from different races, none of them had ever tried eating a human before. Even Yu Yao, who had spoken up earlier and was looking forward to the blood sacrifice, revealed a troubled expression. If Purple Jade Island had presented a spirit beast, he would have gladly tasted it. However, it just so happened to be a Yu Yao cultivator. It was just like how Lu Yi had never used his talent tree to refine the energy within a cultivator's body. It wasn't that he couldn't do it, but rather that he had a natural psychological aversion to it. The lively atmosphere suddenly turned cold. Hu Guang smiled when he saw this. What's wrong? Fellow Taoists, you can eat spirit beasts, but you can't eat anything else? Truth be told, on my purple jade demonic star, only a blood sacrifice of this quality can be considered a true blood sacrifice. The ones from before don't even count. Please believe in me. Today, you will definitely have an unforgettable experience. As he spoke, he turned to Lionheart, senior martial brother. Lionheart remained seated and only nodded slightly. Let's begin. Yes. Hu Guang responded and strode towards the bamboo bed. In a few steps, he stood in front of the bamboo bed. With a flip of his wrist, a slender dagger appeared in his hand. Everyone, don't worry. My knife skills are quite good. I will definitely let everyone taste the freshest blood sacrifice. Before the banquet ends, the blood sacrifice will not die. Hu Guang brandished the dagger, preparing to stab it. It was at this moment that a wine cup suddenly flew out, heading straight for Hu Guang, blocking the short blade's attack. A crisp sound rang out as the wine cup turned into dust. Hu Guang raised his head and looked at Lu Yi. At the same time, Lu Yi's entire body was enveloped by several powerful auras. Almost as soon as he moved to block Hu Guang's attack, these auras descended. They were Purple Jade Island's Yu Yao cultivators. Each of them had an unfriendly expression on their faces. It was clear that they had been prepared. Otherwise, they wouldn't have reacted so quickly. Fellow Taoist, what is the meaning of this? Hu Guang narrowed his eyes at Lu Yi. Under the cover of Yu Yao's aura, Lu Yi couldn't do anything. He could only sit where he was and think about how he could save Wei Po's life. However, Hu Guang's aura suddenly became extremely dangerous. He stared at Lu Yi and said, Fellow cultivator, you might not know this, but the blood sacrifice is a sacred and supreme ceremony for my Yao clan. If anyone dares to interrupt this ceremony, my Yao clan will fight to the death. Although it's said that you are a guest, it's best that you have a suitable reason. Lu Yi didn't want to expose this fellow's feigned ignorance, so he could only say, Fellow Taoist, please calm down. It's just that the person on the bamboo bed is a cultivator from my Three Realms Island. He mysteriously disappeared a year ago. We've been trying to track him down, but we haven't been able to find him. We don't know how he ended up being captured by your esteemed island, and is even being used as a blood sacrifice. Hu Guang was shocked. Are they cultivators from the Three-World Island? His shock was fake, but many of the guests' shock was genuine. However, these guests soon guessed why Purple Jade Island would suddenly invite them over. Today's banquet was obviously Purple Jade Island's deployment against the Three-World Island. They were just spectators. The guests naturally couldn't be bothered with this kind of thing, so they just sat in their seats and watched quietly. Hu Guang didn't wait for Lu Ye's response and asked again, Fellow Taoist, are you sure this is a cultivator from your Three-World Island? Lu Yi nodded. Of course I'm sure. Very good. Hu Guang's lips curled into a cold smile. He turned to Lionheart and cupped his fists. Senior brother, the culprit who killed my Purple Jade Island's cultivators, has been found. Lionheart coldly harumphed, looking down at Lu Yi with an overbearing gaze. You Three-World Island really have some guts. Lu Yi frowned. What do you mean First Island Master? Lionheart didn't speak, but Hu Guang continued angrily. Fellow Taoist, don't you want to know why my Purple Jade Island captured this person, and even wanted to use him as a sacrifice? I'll tell you now. A year ago, when this person passed by my Purple Jade Island, he killed several of my Purple Jade Island's cultivators for no reason. That's why my Purple Jade Island captured him. In the past year, we've been investigating this person's background, but unfortunately, we didn't find anything. It turns out that he's from the Three-World Island. Hee. He sneered and continued to stare at Lu Yi. Fellow Taoist, my Purple Jade Island has never had any grudges with the Three-World Island. Why would your island's Yu Yao kill my Purple Jade cultivators? Do you think my Purple Jade Island is easy to bully? Lu Yi looked at him and said, My Three-World Island hasn't been established on the Wanxiang Sea for long. Our foundation is still shallow. The island's cultivators have always been cautious, and don't easily make enemies. Fellow Taoist, you say that our island's cultivators killed your island's cultivators. Is there a misunderstanding? Lu Yi didn't believe a single word that Wei Pa said, that he killed purple jade cultivators near Purple Jade Island. However, since he brought this matter up, it was useless for him to refute. The only thing he could do now was to think of a way to save Wei Po's life. A light voice suddenly came from the opposite side of Lu Yi. It's true that the three-world island hasn't been established on the Wanxiang Sea for long, but their battle records are extremely impressive. They captured a high-class spiritual island just like that. Their efficiency and speed are unprecedented in the Wanxiang Sea. I admire them. Fellow Taoist Lu, is this what you meant when you said that the three-world island doesn't easily make enemies? That's right. Those who made enemies with the three-world island were all killed. Fellow Taoist Lu's words can be seen from a certain perspective. Lu Yi looked at the smiling Yuan Cheng and said calmly, "The battle with Baiyue was a self-defense counterattack by my three-world island. We didn't initiate the battle. Fellow Taoist Yuan should know the reason best. Why do you have to be so sarcastic?" "I don't know." Yuan Cheng shook his head. "I only know that Baiyue was captured by you. The Yu Yao on Baiyue Island were all killed. If the other constellations didn't run fast enough, they probably wouldn't have been left alive. Fellow Taoist, you're decisive and ruthless. I truly admire you. Come, let me offer you a toast." As he said this, he finished his drink. Lu Yi ignored him. Yuan Cheng was deliberately fanning the flames. There was no point in paying attention to him. He turned to look at Hu Guang and said, "Fellow Taoist, you said that my three-world islands cultivators killed the purple jade cultivators. There must be a misunderstanding. Can you release the restriction so that I can ask?" Hu Guang said coldly, "There's no misunderstanding. I saw what happened that day with my own eyes. I was the one who captured this person." Lu Yi couldn't help but frown. Hu Guang's words were so firm that there was no room for him to mediate. Just as he was thinking, Hu Guang changed the topic and said, "Previously I, Zixian, have been investigating this person's background. Now that I know he is a cultivator of the three-world island and fellow Taoist Lu is the third island master of the three-world island. Can you give me an explanation?" Lu Yi asked. "What kind of explanation do you want?" Without a second thought, Hu Guang immediately raised two fingers. "Every Zixuan cultivator who was killed will be compensated with 200 million spirit jades. Those dead cultivators were the mainstays of their respective clans. Their deaths will be a fatal blow to the development of their respective clans." Lu Yi didn't expect Hu Guang to raise such a condition. He couldn't help but ask, "How much?" Hu Guang said, "He killed 5 purple jade cultivators. The total is 1 billion. Lu Yi looked at him. 1 billion spirit jades for his life? Hu Guang smiled faintly. "If fellow Taoist thinks it's too expensive, you don't have to agree." Lu Yi asked, "Fellow Taoist, are you sure that I can take him away from Purple Jade Island safely if I hand over 1 billion spirit jades?" Hu Guang nodded and said, "Of course." Lu Yi nodded. "Please wait a moment." As he said this, he took out a sound talisman and pretended to send a message. Hu Guang was stunned. He didn't expect Lu Yi to agree so readily. 1 billion spirit jades for Yu Yao's life. Not everyone had this kind of decisiveness. He offered 1 billion spirit jades to force Lu Yi to agree to other conditions. After all, this wasn't a good deal. If Wei Po was really talented and had a promising future, then so be it. However, although Wei Po was talented, no one could say for sure what his future would be like. On the other side, on the three-world island, Lu Yi opened his eyes and looked at Luan Xiao, who had been waiting for him. "Senior sister, quickly prepare 1 billion spirit jades." "What are you going to do with the spirit jades?" Luan Xiao was shocked. "To buy Wei Po's life." Lu Yi briefly explained the situation with his clone. Luan Xiao's expression was conflicted. After a while, she gritted her teeth and said, "Junior brother, even if you really give them 1 billion spirit jades, Purple Jade Island won't let this matter rest. Wei Po probably won't survive." Purple Jade Island had waited for a year to complete their current plan. How could they easily reach a compromise with the three-world island? The compensation of 1 billion spirit jades was just a pretext. Purple Jade Island didn't expect Lu Yi to agree to this proposal. Their goal wasn't 1 billion spirit jades anyway. Therefore, in Luan Xiao's opinion, sending 1 billion spirit jades over was a complete waste. It wasn't that she didn't want to part with 1 billion spirit jades. Although 1 billion spirit jades was a huge sum, with the current foundation of the three-world island, they could still take it out. However, this kind of investment was meaningless. If she could see this, how could Lu Yi, who was on Purple Jade Island, not see it? However, since the other party had made this proposal, he had no choice but to agree. Lu Yi nodded. Of course I know. However, we can't just sit by and watch Wei Pa be captured. As long as there's a slight possibility, we have to try our best. Senior sister, don't worry. If they really dare to go back on their words, we'll take the 1 billion spirit jades today. We'll definitely get back 10 times more in the future. Luan Xiao naturally trusted Lu Yi unconditionally. She immediately nodded and said, okay. After saying that, she turned and left. After a while, Luan Xiao returned with a large pile of storage rings. She handed them to Lu Yi and said, the spirit jades aren't enough for 1 billion spirit jades. I gathered some materials to make up for it. The total value is definitely more than 1 billion spirit jades. Lu Yi nodded, and immediately left the three-world island with these storage rings. He rushed toward Purple Jade. Half a day later, on Purple Jade Island, Lu Ye's clone looked at Hu Guang. The spirit jades have been gathered. Please open the formation. I need to go out and receive them. End of this chapter. Chapter 1846. Purple Jade Island's great formation isolated the island from the outside. So even if Lu Yi wanted to use void spirit runes to transport those storage rings, he couldn't do it. Taking a step back, even without the great formation's isolation, the precious blood clone didn't have the means to activate the talent tree's power. So it wouldn't be easy to construct a void spirit rune. The best way was to go directly to the rescue. Hearing this, Hu Guang just smiled faintly. Why don't you have someone send the spirit jades in? He was obviously afraid that Lu Yi would take the opportunity to escape. Of course, Lu Yi wouldn't agree. He didn't have any scruples about the precious blood clone coming to Purple Jade Island, but his main body couldn't enter personally. If others sealed the great formation, he would become a turtle in a jar. So he said, don't worry, fellow Taoist. Since I'm here, I won't leave. I'll return after receiving the spirit jades. Hu Guang still shook his head. No. Lu Yi blinked and said, in that case, why don't you go personally? If Hu Guang could leave Purple Jade and meet his main body, then his main body could subdue him. Although Hu Guang was at the late stage of Yu Yao, Lu Yi didn't take him seriously. At that time, Zixian would have Wei Pa, and he would have Hu Guang. Everyone would have chips in hand, so things would be easy. Hu Guang stared deeply at Lu Yi, smiled and nodded. Okay. Thank you. Lu Yi nodded expressionlessly. Hu Guang turned around and said, Junior Marshal Brother Hu, Junior Marshal Sister Bao, come with me. Opposite Lu Yi, at the seats next to Yuan Cheng, a young man and a vigorous woman stood up. Then, the three figures rushed out of the island together. Lu Yi picked up his wine cup and sipped lightly, his expression calm. Old Tang was right. On the entire Purple Jade Island, Hu Guang was the most scheming person. It was said that foxes were suspicious by nature, and it was true. If it were anyone else, no matter who stood in Hu Guang's position, they wouldn't think too much about going out to receive the spirit jades. However, this guy actually dragged two companions with him. After all, the location of the rescue was just outside Purple Jade Island. This Yu Yao of the monster clan was too cautious. In a one-on-one battle, Lu Yi was confident that he could take down Hu Guang, but in a one-on-three battle he wasn't so sure. At that time, if he acted rashly and failed, it would only make Wei Pa die even faster. Outside the Purple Jade Island, Hu Guang and the other two appeared. Lu Ye's original body had already put away the mountain pan saber and activated the simulated might and the Thousand Faces spirit inscriptions to change his aura and appearance. After exchanging glances with Hu Guang, Lin Fan's true self handed the storage rings over to Hu Guang, then turned and left. Watching Lu Ye's figure disappear, Junior Brother Hu spoke up. Senior Brother, you can take him down. Hu Guang shook his head. Outside the island, once the battle starts, it's hard to conceal the aftermath. If we can't take him down immediately, the guests on the island will notice. We already have enough bargaining chips in our hands, so there's no need to complicate matters. Junior Marshal's sister Bao giggled and said, Senior Marshal Brother's plan is to attack the Three-Realm Island, and also to stand on the side of justice, lest others mention it later and say that Purple Jade Island is bullying the weak. Hu Guang was gratified and said, That's true. He weighed the storage rings in his hand and said, This is an unexpected gain. The Three-Realm Island is accumulating wealth at an astonishing speed. It's only been a few years, but they've already accumulated so many spirit jades. Junior Marshal Brother Hu said, When we take down the Three-Realm Island, this profit will be ours. Only half of it. Hu Guang shook his head. Junior Marshal Brother Hu and Junior Marshal's sister Bao immediately understood. The other half would definitely be given to Yuan Du after all. There would be another force taking over the Three-Realm Island, and this force would be appointed by Yuan Du. Let's go. Hu Guang turned and rushed towards Purple Jade, followed by Junior Marshal Brother Hu and Junior Marshal sister Bao. A moment later, Hu Guang and the other two returned. Lu Yi looked up and saw that their hands were empty. He narrowed his eyes slightly. How was it? Lionheart, who was sitting at the head of the table, asked. Hu Guang spread out his hands. I didn't see anyone at all. He looked at Lu Yi and asked, Are you sure that someone from your island delivered the spirit jades? Lu Yi looked at him expressionlessly. Is this how Purple Jade does things? Those storage rings were personally handed over by his original body to Hu Guang. But in the blink of an eye, the other party refused to admit it. He really didn't expect that such a large force would be so unsightly. However, this also showed that the other party was determined to go against the Three-Realm Island. Hu Guang looked at him with a smile. What do you mean by that? Lionheart, who was sitting at the head of the table, was furious. He slapped the armrest of his chair and scolded. Fellow Taoist, I, Purple Jade, have already given enough face to the Three-Realm Island. 5 constellations were killed, and you only asked for 1 billion spirit jades as compensation. Yet you still want to play with us like this. Do you have any respect for Purple Jade? Hu Guang's smile disappeared, and he said coldly, Since the Three-Realm Island isn't willing to compensate, then let's go to war. Since ancient times, a life for a life is the right thing to do. Among the guests someone shouted, That's right, a life for a life. Lu Yi suddenly turned to look at the person who spoke. He looked familiar, and vaguely felt that he had seen him somewhere before. After thinking carefully, he finally remembered who this person was. Giant Blade Island Zhao Yunqi. During the war against the Yu, the Giant Blade Island had also participated. They took advantage of the fact that the Three-Realm Island was undefended and secretly occupied it. However, before they could even sit down, they heard that the Yu had been defeated. They panicked and quickly retreated. After the Three-Realm Island's cultivators occupied the Yu, Lu Yi led his troops to camp at the entrance of the Giant Blade Island. He acted as if he was going to attack the Giant Blade Island. At that time, Zhao Yunqi was terrified. In the end, they had to compensate the Three-Realm Island with tens of millions of spirit jades before the Three-Realm Island's cultivators retreated. Zhao Yunqi had always been brooding over the matter of the past. They clearly didn't do anything. All they did was break an empty shell formation of the Three-Realm Island, and they were swindled of tens of millions of spirit jades. Today there was a rare opportunity, and he excitedly agreed. He felt very happy. When he met Lu Ye's gaze, Zhao Yunqi couldn't help but shrink back. However, he quickly straightened his back, because he felt that Lu Yi wouldn't live past today. If Purple Jade wanted to attack the Three-Realm Island, how could the Three-Realm Island stop her? That's right, a life for a life. Lionheart coldly snorted, and raised his hand to grab the bamboo bed. His huge palm covered it, and with a squeeze, the bamboo bed shattered. Weipa bled from his nose and mouth, but because of the restriction on his body, he couldn't speak or move. His face was filled with pain. Lu Yi hurriedly looked at Lionheart, and in the next instant his pupil shrank. Lionheart had already opened his mouth, and directly threw Weipa into his mouth. He bit down hard, causing blood to spurt out of his mouth. His expression was terrifying as he stared at Lu Yi while chewing, and with a sinister smile he shouted, "Purple Jade's monster cultivators, flatten the three-realm island." "Yes." Hu Guang and the other cultivators obeyed, and immediately turned to look at Lu Yi with unfriendly expressions. Powerful divine senses firmly locked onto him. Hu Guang said, "Lu Yi, you've ruined my Purple Jade's blood sacrifice ceremony. You'll be today's sacrifice." Lu Ye's gaze swept across the Yu Yao monster cultivators before suddenly looking at Yuan Cheng, who was looking at him with a smug smile. Yuan Cheng's heart skipped a beat, as he instinctively felt that something was wrong. But before he could react, Lu Yi had already moved. His figure flashed out like a bolt of lightning, and when he unsheathed the long saber at his waist, a dazzling saber light flashed. "You dare!" Hu Guang shouted in shock. He never thought that Lu Yi would actually attack Yuan Cheng. If Yuan Cheng died on Purple Jade Island, they wouldn't be able to explain it to Yuan. He immediately moved to stop him, and the other Yu Yao monster cultivators also moved. Even Lionheart, who was sitting upright, raised a palm and slapped towards Lu Yi. At this moment, at least 7 or 8 Yu Yao monsters attacked together. Under such circumstances, even if the precious blood clone could display the full strength of the main body for a short time, it would still be difficult for him to dodge. A muffled groan rang out and blood splattered. Lu Ye's chest and back were caved in, and even his left leg was cut off. Enduring this round of attacks, Lu Yi brazenly broke out of the encirclement. His body, which seemed to be pouncing towards Yuan Cheng, suddenly turned and pounced towards his junior brother who was not far away from Yuan Cheng. Seeing Lu Ye's miserable appearance, junior brother who wasn't afraid at all, he stretched out his hand like a claw towards Lu Ye's heart. Lu Yi raised his saber to slash, but his junior sister Bao easily blocked him. With a poochie, junior brother whose large hand stabbed into Lu Ye's chest, he immediately revealed a sinister smile and squeezed hard, trying to crush Lu Ye's heart. But soon, a puzzled expression appeared on his face, because he couldn't feel anything. It was as if Lu Ye's chest didn't have a heart at all. This puzzled him. When he looked up, he saw Lu Ye's cold expression and an icy voice in his ear. "A life for a life. A debt of blood must be paid in blood." As his voice fell, Lu Yi threw away the long saber in his hand and grabbed junior brother whose arms. Seeing the determination in Lu Ye's eyes, junior brother who was startled and suddenly realized one thing. Lu Ye's target had never been Yuan Cheng, but him. After all, Yuan Cheng was backed by Yuan Du. Killing Yuan Cheng here today would only bring disaster to Three World Island. So Lu Yi naturally wouldn't do such a thing. With Lu Yi grabbing his arms, junior brother who panicked. Although he didn't know what Lu Yi intended to do, he could clearly sense a violent aura surging from Lu Ye's body. Immediately after, a red light flashed in front of him, and an incomparably violent shockwave swept out in all directions. The several monster race Yu Yao who had come to support junior brother, who were knocked off balance and staggered. Lionheart's eyes widened in that instant, his face filled with astonishment. He clearly saw that after Lu Yi spoke those words, Lu Ye's entire body suddenly exploded. Even Lionheart felt his heart palpitate. Many cries of alarm rang out, and the banquet hall fell into chaos. Yuan Cheng, who wasn't far from junior brother who was sent flying by the shockwave, and the protective magic artifact covering his body quickly dimmed. Fortunately, he had summoned a magic artifact to protect himself at the critical moment. Otherwise, just the shockwave alone would have been enough to seriously injure him. When he finally steadied himself and looked around again, he couldn't help but feel his scalp go numb. Lu Yi, who he hated bitterly, was nowhere to be seen. Obviously he was dead, and his junior brother whose body was also in tatters. Half of his body was missing, and the remaining half was riddled with holes. He stood in a daze, feeling his vitality rapidly fading. He instinctively looked at Lionheart, and called out in a muffled voice, "Save me." Chapter 1847. Hu Guang flew over to junior martial brother, who like a gust of wind, and placed him on the ground. He then took out a top-grade healing pill, and stuffed it into junior martial brother whose mouth. Relax, hurry up and refine the pill. Junior martial brother Hu chuckled bitterly. He showed no signs of refining the pill. He had already cultivated to the late-stage Yu Yao realm, so he naturally knew what kind of injuries could be fatal. Even though he was a monster with a powerful physique and abundant blood essence, there was no way he could survive such a severe injury unless he had the legendary miracle medicine that could bring the dead back to life. His cry for help just now was only an instinctive fear of death. Cough. Junior martial brother, who spat out a mouthful of blood mixed with chunks of his internal organs. I've embarrassed Zixian. It was supposed to be a foolproof plan, but one of them had been forcibly killed. If news of this were to spread, they would definitely become a laughingstock. His death would also diminish their upcoming victory. It's not like that. Hu Guang's heart was bleeding. Although they weren't of the same race, they were both monsters. He had watched junior martial brother Hu grow up, and they were as close as father and son. Now that junior martial brother Hu was in such a pitiful state, and he was the one who had led the plan, he felt both guilty and pained. How could this be? Junior martial sister Bao stood to the side. Even someone as powerful as Yu Yao was shocked by this scene. She was even more terrified. If Lu Yi had targeted her just now, then the one lying on the ground right now wouldn't be junior martial brother Hu but her. Blood explosion technique. Lionheart, who had already stood up from the main seat, gritted his teeth and yelled with a dark expression. Blood explosion technique. He was very experienced and knowledgeable, so he could naturally tell that Lu Yi had used a blood Dao secret technique, the blood explosion technique. This was a secret technique that belonged to the blood tribe. It was a secret technique that blood tribe members used to perish together with their enemies in desperate situations. However, what he couldn't understand was how a mid-stage Yu Yao realm cultivator could unleash such a powerful blood explosion technique. Junior martial brother whose cultivation base was one level higher than Lu Ye's, and his monster physique was extremely powerful. Even if he had been the first to bear the brunt of the attack, this shouldn't have been the result. However, the truth was right in front of him. Junior martial brother Hu was beyond saving. This was completely illogical. Even a true blood tribe member with a mid-stage Yu Yao realm cultivator shouldn't be able to unleash such terrifying destructive power. Ha 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 ha. A loud laugh rang out, adding a hint of strangeness to the bleak atmosphere. The group of Yu Yao cultivators turned around angrily, wanting to see just who was laughing so arrogantly. In the end, it turned out to be the Five-Color Islands Bayan. Fellow Taoist Bai Dang, why are you laughing? Lionheart looked at him coldly with a hint of questioning in his eyes. Today's matter was not complete. Junior brother Tiger's death could no longer be reversed, and this filled his heart with anger. He looked at Swan Xiao with eyes filled with cold killing intent. After watching a good show, my heart was very happy, so I laughed. Lao Ai held a wine jar and looked back at Lionheart without a change in expression. The two great island masters of the two spiritual islands looked at each other from afar. The atmosphere was tense. Senior brother, Hu Guang softly called out, and then slowly shook his head. Lionheart also knew that Bayan was not to be trifled with. Zixian would not offend Rainbow Island over such a trivial matter. His eyes flashed and his killing intent disappeared. He said indifferently, I heard that fellow Taoist has a good relationship with Lu Yi? What does it have to do with you? Lao Ai replied rudely and slowly stood up. There's no show to watch, right? If there's no show, then I'm leaving. Carrying a jar of wine, he turned and rushed out of the island. Along the way, he laughed wildly, making the group of Moon Jade Islands Yao cultivators tremble in anger. Soon, Swan Xiao arrived in front of the island's protective formation. He rudely ordered the Purple Jade Islands Yao cultivators stationed here. Activate the formation. The Purple Jade Islands Yao cultivators recognized Swan Xiao, so naturally, they would not make things difficult for him. They immediately activated the formation, and Swan Xiao rushed out. A figure flew in front of him. Swan Xiao glanced at him and did not recognize him, so he did not pay much attention to him. However, he was sure that this cultivator should be a Purple Jade Islands Yao cultivator because he shouted while flying, Senior brothers, please close the formation and let me in. They brushed past each other. Swan Xiao suddenly turned around and glanced at the star constellation realm Yao cultivator. He vaguely felt that something was strange. As for what exactly was strange, he could not tell. It was just an instinctive feeling. However, it had nothing to do with him in the end. He had watched a great show today, and it was very interesting. Moreover, he had already been warned by Lu Yi that the one who died in battle was only a clone of Lu Yi. Lu Ye's true body was still hiding somewhere safe. The highlight of this great show had not been revealed yet. If the Purple Jade Island's Yao cultivator knew the truth, he would definitely be very sad because this undoubtedly meant that junior brother who had died in vain. When he thought of this, Swordsmanship was even more delighted. He was secretly impressed. Lu Yi was indeed an extraordinary figure. However, it was not strange. How could someone who could save him from the filth tribe be ordinary? Back in the Jade Conch galaxy, he had personally experienced Lu Ye's strength. At that time, Lu Yi was only at the early stage of Moon Jade Island. Now that Lu Ye's cultivation base had advanced, his strength could only be stronger. Inside the formation, the Yao cultivator entered Purple Jade Island. The Yao cultivators guarding here recognized him, and one of them said, "Junior brother Ho Fei, how is the three-world island?" Ho Fei said, "It's the same as before. How is the situation here?" The Yao cultivator who spoke glanced in the direction of the banquet. "I don't know the exact situation, but it must have been a fight. There were very strong shockwaves just now, and Swordsmanship from the five-color island has left early." Ho Fei pondered. "Then the army should be deployed soon. Senior brothers, please continue with your work. I'll go prepare first." After saying this, he walked towards the island. At the banquet, junior brother who had already died. Before he died, he only left behind a few words. Flatten the three-world island. This was Zixian's ultimate goal. Lu Yi had died in Zixian's hands. It could be said that the greatest threat had been eliminated, because according to the information they had gathered, although Lu Ye's cultivation base was not high, he was very strong. Back then, Yu Huan was at the late stage of Moon Jade Island, but she was chased into a corner by him. This was also the reason why Hu Guangyo had deployed today. Their purpose was to invite the enemy into their trap. If Lu Yi came, no matter what he did, he would not be able to leave alive. If he did not come, Zixian would not lose anything. Furthermore, they could use Wei Pe, who was captured alive, as an excuse to attack. As a top force, Zixian had to consider their reputation when doing things on the 10,000 Elephant Sea. If they attacked a high-class spiritual island for no reason, it would inevitably cause other similar forces to fear and panic Zixian. If Zixian could attack the three-world island for no reason today, they could attack other spiritual islands in the future. With a reputation, it would be different. Today's banquet had so many guests, and they were all island masters of the various spiritual islands. Naturally, they would spread the word that it was the three-world islands cultivators who killed the Purple Jade cultivators first, and Zixian's side retaliated. They had the moral high ground. As for whether the three-world islands cultivators killed the Purple Jade cultivators, it did not matter if they did in the past, but today they did. Under everyone's watchful eyes, junior brother who died under Lu Ye's blood explosion technique. This was a hatred that would not rest until one of them was dead. Under everyone's watchful eyes, Lionheart's angry voice resounded throughout the Purple Jade Island. Attack the three-world island. Within 3 days, I want the entire three-world island to be wiped out. Upon receiving the order, all the demon cultivators were filled with murderous intent. The Purple Jade cultivators had been waiting for this day for a year. All kinds of secret arrangements had already been made. Hence, under Lionheart's order, all the demon cultivators on the Purple Jade Island moved instantly. At the banquet, Hu Guang bowed to all the guests. Today's incident has frightened all of you. I will visit you again in the future to apologize. The guests naturally knew what Hu Guang meant. They returned the greeting and left. Zixian was going to attack the three-world island. Of course, it was not suitable for them to stay. After watching the guests leave, Hu Guang glanced at the remains of junior brother, who with a sorrowful gaze, he ordered, "Take junior brother Hu away and settle him down." Immediately, a demon cultivator who was on good terms with Junior Brother who walked out. He bent down, picked up Junior Brother whose body, and left quickly. Yuan Cheng had not left yet. He sighed and looked at Hu Guang. My condolences. Hu Guang remained silent and only nodded. On the other side, the demon cultivator Yu Yao carrying Junior Brother, whose body rushed towards Junior Brother, whose sleeping quarters. Suddenly, he noticed a figure approaching from the corner of his eye. He turned his head, and immediately recognized the Yao cultivator. He was the one who had been sent to the Three-World Island to monitor Lu Ye's movements. His name was Ho Fei, and he was the one who had sent the news of Lu Ye's return from the Three-World Island. He immediately shouted, Ho Fei, what are you doing running around instead of gathering? Ho Fei hurriedly said, Lord Red Elephant, I have something to report. It's about the Three-World Island. Red Elephant immediately stopped and asked in a low voice, What is it? After speaking, he suddenly felt that something was wrong. He looked at the long saber in Ho Fei's hand and asked, When did you use a saber? He had some understanding of Ho Fei. This guy walked the path of ghost cultivators. It was somewhat strange that he suddenly carried a long saber. Spoils of war, Ho Fei casually replied. It's a good saber. Lord Red Elephant, why don't you take a look? Red Elephant felt that Ho Fei was a bit messy today. He clearly said that he had something to report, yet he inexplicably asked him to look at the saber. Before he could refuse, the long saber at Ho Fei's waist had already been unsheathed. Red Elephant's eyes widened. In that instant, Ho Fei's face rapidly distorted. Even his cultivation, which was originally at the late stage of the constellation realm, suddenly surged, revealing the strength of the middle stage of the Yu Yao realm. A bright saber light flashed past. Red Elephant cried out in alarm and staggered back. He felt a pain in his chest. Red Elephant did not need to look to know that he was injured. There was definitely a wound on his chest that was so deep that his bones could be seen. This was all thanks to him tossing Junior Brother, whose body out to block the attack at the critical moment. Although Junior Brother who was dead, and only his body was left, his body was still tough. Ho Fei's saber not only severed Junior Brother whose body, but also injured him. It was clear how fierce the attack was. End of chapter. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.